Gwen shuffled down the street, barely moving her feet. She was coming back from the shop. She had recently received money, so the elderly woman went to the nearest supermarket. She had to buy potatoes, some meat, some cereals were almost out, and also milk, flour, and sugar. The bag was heavy, although before for Gwen it was not a weight. In the cow she used to pull hay with a pitchfork, carry huge boxes, and carry buckets full of milk or water. It was a lot of work, but now Gwen was in her 70s, and age was certainly taking its toll. Her back often ached, her arms were weak, and she dragged the bag from the supermarket with great difficulty, slowly stopping every now and then to catch her breath. A couple of times she was helped by passers-by and two teenage boys with school bags on their shoulders, and a middle-aged woman and a tall young guy offered to help her. But Gwen refused with a smile. She was in no hurry to go anywhere. And these people are kind. It was immediately obvious, were in a hurry to do their own thing. So why distract them? Gwen walked so slowly not only because she was held back by a heavy bag, she just did not want to go home. And home, the place where she was now returning, language could not be called. So shelter was home. She used to have a house, spacious, bright, cozy, with a big kitchen and a stove for half a room, with a vegetable garden and a carved arbor, which Gwen's father used to put up. With beloved friends and neighbors nearby, Gwen lived well, although her work was hard. She worked most of her life on the farm in the cow shed and looked after the animals and cleaned the pens. She worked double shifts to provide her son with everything he needed. She would leave in the dark and return when the sun was already setting over the horizon. Her back ached, her arms and legs ached, but still the old woman recalled those times with nostalgia. She felt much happier then than she did now. The cold November rain came suddenly without warning, in the form of a drizzle, as if someone upstairs had opened a tap of ice water. Gwen hurried up. The walk seemed to be canceled. We'd have to go back. There was no way out. The rain was picking up and the wind was picking up. No, there was no way to get home. She had to wait it out. Gwen hurried to the porch of the nearest shop, where she could stand under the canopy until the rain stopped, and then she could go home. On the patterned tiled platform, people gathered, cheerful children, for whom the sudden autumn downpour was another adventure, frowning adults, late because of the rain, on their business. Gwen's gaze suddenly fell on a young boy. He was standing with his back against the wall, staring indifferently at the street. Bright turquoise eyes, well-defined cheekbones, fringes falling down to his forehead, the color of ripe wheat, a real beauty. He must have a lot of girls. He looked just like Sebastian, a guy Gwen had known for only 2 days of her life. It had been almost 4 decades ago, and yet the older woman remembered every feature of the man's face, his scent, and the words he'd said to her. Sebastian, that man, if still alive, had long forgotten his casual acquaintance. How many had he had? Young girls are attracted to good looks. Sebastian does not realize that he has played such a role in the life of one of his many admirers. A key role, you could say. The guy Gwen was secretly watching pulled his phone out of his pocket and stared at the screen, occasionally running his finger across the display. He was either watching a video or reading something. Young people nowadays are so dependent on these gadgets. Good or bad, Gwen didn't know. Her youth was quite different. Gwen was born into a family of a tractor driver and a milkmaid. When she was only 2 years old, she became the eldest child. Her parents had another daughter who was named Kimberly. The family lived poorly, but decently. They did not starve, did not go in rags, but also did not go to resorts. Fur coats and luxury cars did not buy. Their parents worked hard, so Gwen and Kimberly learned early to take care of the house. Gwen, looking at modern children, who, in her opinion, overprotective parents, marveled. She and her sister, at the age of 7 or 8 years old, could already wash the floors, and lunch, and cook dinner. Not only that, the girls cleaned the yard, looked after the livestock, did their homework and laundry themselves, without reminder. And after all, they did not yet have the newfangled wonders of technology, which greatly simplify life: washing machines, dishwashers, multi-cookers, and so on. The girls still had a lot of free time. Having coped with the lessons and finished with household chores, the sisters with a clear conscience went to the street to friends. All their peers lived in the same way and had time to do housework, and at school, and with classmates to play. Gwen and Kimberly have always been very friendly, stood for each other mountain. Gwen has the fondest memories of her childhood. Then everything was simple, clear and easy. The future was seen in bright colors. Gwen at school did not learn very well, unlike her younger sister. Kimberly, that all-on-the-fly grasped, and complex formulas for her were not a problem, and complicated rules of the Russian language in the head of her younger sister, all as if by itself on the shelves laid out. For Gwen, however, the sciences throughout her studies remained Chinese literacy. She seemed to try, she always did her homework. She was not lazy, did not slack off, well, not given probably. Kimberly, she understood everything effortlessly. She just had such a clear head. Her parents were proud of their youngest daughter. Maybe someone in the family will get a college education, dreamed her mother. You will get out in the people. My daughter, you have a head on your shoulders, reasoned the father. It is foolish to miss such a chance. You just try, and we will help. Gwen was also proud of her sister, but it hurt her to hear such words of her parents. Her mother and father didn't count on her. They didn't expect anything from her. All hope was in Kimberly. Kimberly did her best, studied and never called out her sister. On the contrary, she helped her with her lessons when Gwen was faced with another unsolvable task. Time passed. The sisters grew up. Gwen went to study in the city, went to college, specialty, chose a working technology of sewing products. The girl's hands always grew from the right place. She realized that she would become a good tailor. Right, approved the choice of the eldest daughter's father. The specialty is wonderful. You won't be left without a piece of bread. You have golden hands, agreed with her mother, on your way. After studying, Gwen decided to stay in the city. The girl got a job in an attire, rented a flat nearby, began to take part-time work, and after a while Gwen already provided for herself. In the attire paid not so much, but very helpful part-time work. Someone to make a dress, someone to sew a coat, someone to sew a tablecloth or curtains to process. Gwen was never out of work, never out of money. Kimberly, meanwhile, studied at the university for a law degree. Ah, how the eyes of parents glowed with pride when they told acquaintances about it. For the eldest daughter, mother and father were calm. Hard-working, handy Gwen will not be lost. But the youngest daughter they were really proud of. You bet, smart, beautiful, and still at university. Gwen was genuinely happy for her sister. What can you do? Well, she was not given to chew the granite of science, but her hands with that end inserted, it is noted by everyone. Time passed. Gwen's friends got married, had children, and the girl herself with it somehow did not add up. Those who liked her did not attract her herself, and guys who liked Gwen, for some reason, preferred other girls. Such a paradox. Learning that the next friend or former classmate was going to marry, Gwen worried, and what if she will remain alone and lonely as an old maid? And even parents added oil to the fire. Every time the eldest daughter came to visit them, they pestered her with questions: when to marry, when children, when will you settle down? Kimberly's mother and father didn't pester her like that. For one thing, she was the youngest daughter. As long as her older sister didn't get married, she didn't have to worry about such things. Secondly, Kimberly was still in school, and after her 5th year she was going to go to graduate school. Parents were in awe of this choice of the younger daughter, saw her in dreams, a university teacher or even a professor, but from the eldest expected just human happiness, handy, cheerful, good-natured son-in-law, favorite grandchildren. Gwen was almost in despair. Every guy in her environment she looked at as a potential spouse and evaluated young people only from this position. Of course, such an obsession did not go unnoticed and scared off men. And then there was dancing in the club. Gwen went there with her friends. She was not particularly fond of dancing, and from the loud music she immediately began to have a headache, but at the dance can meet someone. Emily's friend is there. She found a husband there. They live together now. They are expecting their first child. Gwen wanted the same love, a husband, a child, simple human happiness. The girl carefully gathered for the event, put on her best dress, tight, short, revealing good legs, twisted her hair into curls, painted her eyelashes and lips, looked at herself in the mirror, and, satisfied with the result, slipped out of the house. Gwen didn't hold out much hope, as she went to the dance at least once every 2 to 3 months and always came back with nothing. But that night, that evening turned out to be completely different, unusual, magical, amazing. Sebastian first turned his attention to one of Gwen's friends, the blue-eyed beauty Beatrice. The boy approached the flock of girls to get acquainted. He seemed to address all of them, but he kept his eyes on Beatrice. Gwen realized she was lost. When she saw the stranger's turquoise eyes, they looked cheerful, mischievous, with a slightly sly squint, and his smile like that would drive anyone crazy. Sebastian was a witty and fun conversationalist. He felt confident, not embarrassed like so many of the other guys. The girls in Gwen's company, and she herself, of course, looked at him as if mesmerized. Now Gwen envied Beatrice. She wished she could have this young man looking so interested in her rather than her friend. She would have given a lot for that, but Sebastian asked Beatrice to one dance, then another. Gwen watched them enviously from around the corner. She saw the boy try several times to hold Beatrice tighter than the rules of decency allowed. His hand slipped below her waist every now and then. Beatrice, embarrassed, tried to pull away. Gwen didn't understand her. What is this modesty and childish behavior? They're adults. They've already graduated. They're working. After another dance, the embarrassed Beatrice slipped outside, as if to get some fresh air. Gwen realized that her friend had just been frightened by her beau's pressure, so she had found an excuse to run away. Gwen had been watching the couple all evening and could see exactly what was going on. Sebastian hurried after his lady, but then Gwen got in his way, just as the slow music started to play. "Shall we dance?" Gwen smiled at the boy. It was a desperate and bold move. Actually, Gwen had never behaved like this before, but now it was as if someone was leading her by the hand. The girl suddenly felt relaxed, confident. She didn't have a shadow of doubt. Sebastian would definitely agree to dance with her. And so he did. For a moment, the boy stared at Gwen, as if trying to remember who she was. Well, of course, at the moment of acquaintance, Sebastian looked only Beatrice. He was not to others. But in the next second, the guy smiled radiantly at Gwen, which made her heart pound desperately, and her palms immediately sweat, and held out his hand to her. They danced in his arms, Gwen melting in his warm embrace. When the music stopped, he even kissed the girl. Of course, it was not the first kiss in Gwen's life, but she had never had such a reaction before. She felt dizzy and her eyes went dark. She wished Sebastian could hold her like this in his arms for the rest of her life. She didn't care if he kissed and hugged her in front of everyone. Let them look, let them be jealous. And she didn't care what or who would think of her. "Shall we go for a walk?" Sebastian suggested in a slightly hoarse voice. Svetlana was all for it. She wanted to be alone with him too. They wandered through the city at night, holding hands tightly. Sebastian said something about himself. Then Gwen asked questions about her life. When he learned that she lived alone, he suggested without preamble that they go to her place. Gwen agreed without hesitation. In the evening and at night, Gwen played a very pleasant role for herself. The girl imagined that she and Sebastian were husband and wife, who loved each other and were going to live together all their lives. She was pleased to be near this man, to take care of him. What happiness is it to fall asleep next to the one you love? Sebastian was already asleep, but Gwen lay looking at the ceiling and savored the sensation. The warmth of a loved one, his measured breathing, silence, calmness, just the two of them. Magical. Svetlana realized that she had fallen in love. She fell in love as she had never fallen in love in her life. She didn't know she was capable of such feelings. Gwen didn't know much about Sebastian. He had managed to say that he lived in another city. Which one he didn't mention. Nothing. Tomorrow will tell. Here the guy came to visit a friend. They served in the army together. He invited Sebastian as a friend of the groom, because Sebastian would be leaving soon, but now everything had changed. They met each other. Sebastian wasn't going anywhere, and if he did, he'd probably take her with him. He'd been looking at her all evening. Those looks, that spark between them, it was rare. How lucky they were to have met each other at the dance. In the morning, Gwen woke up to the sound of someone rattling pans in the kitchen. Her nose caught the scent of scrambled eggs. The girl stretched in bed and smiled, remembering the events of the previous evening. It was Sebastian. He was preparing their breakfast. How marvelous and romantic it is. Before meeting her lover, Gwen looked into the bathroom. She washed her face, smoothed her hair, just a little so it wouldn't be noticeable, touched her lips with lipstick and pinched her cheeks, causing a slight blush. She wanted to appear before Sebastian in all her glory. He had indeed cooked scrambled eggs, and they were smoking in the pan. "Good morning," he smiled. "I've been tending to your place for a while. Is that all right?" "I was just hungry." "It's for the best." Gwen smiled radiantly. "Breakfast almost in bed. How romantic." "Well, let me take care of you." With these words, Sebastian took out a plate, deftly put a piece of scrambled eggs on it, sprinkled all this splendor with greens on top. Gwen watched his every move like a mesmerized woman. Her heart was beating joyfully in her chest. At last she met her man. And what a man! Beautiful, intelligent, attentive, caring. The young people ate breakfast in silence. Sebastian looked thoughtful. He was obviously thinking about something, and Gwen didn't want to distract him. "Thank you for the evening," he finally broke the silence. "I have to go. I have to stop by Norman's, pack my things, and get to the train station." Svetlana felt as if she'd been hit over the head with a sandbag. How come? Is he leaving already? And what about her? After all, they are so good, so cozy together. "You're leaving already?" "Yes, didn't I tell you?" Sebastian was surprised, and then suddenly he smiled his charming smile. "Yeah, well, we didn't have much time to talk last night." "I thought you were staying." "I would have stayed. You're great, really, but the train is in 3 hours and there's a lot to do." "Will I see you again?" Gwen fought hard against the tears coming to her eyes. She had already realized everything, guessed from Sebastian's look and his tone. It turned out to be an illusion of their feelings and sparks. Sebastian hadn't planned anything serious from the start. Gwen had invented an unearthly love and a fateful, chance meeting, and for him she was just another girl for a pleasant pastime, pleasant and not obliging to anything. Gwen didn't make a scene. She pulled herself together and gave herself an indifferent look. Let Sebastian guess nothing. Let him think that he was nothing more than a casual acquaintance for the evening. She didn't want to look pathetic in his eyes. Yes, Gwen cared what he thought of her, but Sebastian seemed to have noticed something. "Are you upset?" he asked sympathetically, and something like guilt seemed to flicker in his eyes. No, Gwen couldn't be angry with him. He hadn't promised her anything, hadn't lied to her. Now he seemed genuinely concerned for her. A little she smiled. "I thought we had at least another evening to spare." "You're wonderful." Sebastian kissed her on the top of the head. "If I had another day, I would have spent it with you. That's for sure, but I have to go. It was very nice to meet you." Sebastian left. He had his own life, his own plans. Already today he would be far, far away from Gwen, and probably in 2 or 3 days the guy would forget about this meeting. He was, Gwen realized now, Sebastian, not the kind of man who looked for a serious relationship. He likes to get acquainted with girls. The guy likes communication, adventure, admiration, and it's not his fault. Age is such, character, temperament. Besides, Sebastian did not lie to anyone, did not promise golden mountains. Gwen had chosen to spend the evening with him. Beatrice. She ran away when she realized what was going on. And she, Gwen, agreed to stay with Sebastian, and no regrets, by the way. Time passed. Life went back to normal. Gwen worked, met with friends, read, watched TV, and went to the cinema, went to visit her parents. All in all, she had a normal life. But now she often thought of Sebastian. She imagined how their relationship might have turned out. She also dreamed that he was out there in the big city, thinking of her too. Sebastian knows where she lives. Suddenly he would rush to her one day and say that he missed her, that he loved her, that he couldn't live without her. Of course, Gwen realized that this would never happen, but sweet dreams became so pleasant and light at heart that the girl did not deny herself in them. A month and a half later from that memorable meeting, Gwen suddenly realized that she was expecting a child. The thought pierced her like lightning right at work. One of the employees brought fish for lunch, and the smell coming from her plate, Gwen began to vomit. Yes, so much so that even in the eyes darkened. At first, Gwen tried to find an explanation for her situation. The cycle is disrupted. It's from nerves. After all, she had a hard time getting over the breakup with Sebastian. Nausea, well, also from nerves, plus the results of dieting. Gwen wanted to lose weight, so often did not finish eating, although her appetite was excellent. But a few weeks passed, and ignoring the symptoms became pointless. Gwen went to the doctor, who confirmed her fears. Pregnancy is in its 3rd month. The decision had to be made quickly, either to give birth or to get rid of the fetus. But a couple more weeks, and it would be too late to abort. Gwen was in shock at the news. Not only was she really pregnant, but she had no time to think about it, and she couldn't tell anyone. On the one hand, Gwen really wanted to become a mother. Yes, with marriage did not work out, but what if this is her last chance? She is at an age when her peers are already in full possession of children. It's time for the most, and what if the interruption will put a cross on her motherhood in the future? It happens a lot. It's scary. And then, this is a child Sebastian, beautiful, intelligent, charming man. Gwen had never met anyone like that before. The best candidate for fathers and cannot think of no, of course, Sebastian will not participate in the life of the baby. He will not even know of his existence. What's the matter with him? They will never meet again, and yet such a gene pool. If the baby turns out to be as beautiful, it's a dream come true. Gwen felt she couldn't get rid of the baby. Even with the difficulties she faced, the fate of being a single mother is unenviable. But maybe being single, with no children at all, is even worse. In general, Gwen Pamamayavshiv several days in a row made a difficult decision for herself. She leaves the child and will try her best to give the baby a good childhood. She has a profession in her hands. Her parents, if anything, will definitely help. They are loving, reliable, so the baby to be. Having determined, Gwen felt inner peace and began, finally, to really enjoy life, fully developing under her heart. At this time, Kimberly, the younger sister, graduated from graduate school, received a scientific degree. Not only that, but she had been invited to work overseas for a major research company. It was something incredible in Gwen's eyes. Kimberly, her little sister, has made it this far. She has a dizzying career ahead of her, interesting work, recognition. And she, Gwen, will soon be a single mother. Her parents talked only about their youngest daughter's impending departure. They were proud of her, proud of Kimberly again, and had no idea that their eldest daughter would soon make them happy by being a single mother without 5 minutes. Against the backdrop of her sister's success, for which Gwen was certainly very happy, her own life seemed a complete failure. Kimberly was gone. She phoned her parents and sister, occasionally sending letters in which she enclosed photographs. Kimberly had changed. There was a hardness in her face that made her even more beautiful and attractive. Beautiful, smart, a dream simple, and Gwen had her own life going on. A few months passed, and it was impossible to hide the pregnancy. At work, about everything guessed, the boss was not particularly happy that one of his shaper goes on maternity leave. Now he picked on Gwen's work in every possible way and constantly hinted to her that she would not be waiting for her at work, because a single mother would always take sick leave. Who will work then? All this disturbed Gwen. She understood the case goes to dismissal, yes, pregnant employees, carefully protects the labor law, but you can always find loopholes. That's what the boss found one day. He simply closed the outlier, ceased to exist. Accordingly, all the female employees lost their jobs, but only for one day, because the firm went bankrupt only on paper. In fact, it continued to function without stopping. The very next day, the boss hired the dressmakers back to their former positions, all except Gwen. Pregnant employees, and then single mothers with a small child were unnecessary for the boss. Gwen was left without a job and without means of livelihood. She had no savings. She didn't even have money to pay her rent. Gwen had to go back to her parents in the village and confess everything to them. Mother and father, of course, surprised to hear the story of his daughter, but not particularly upset, even seemingly on the contrary. "Don't worry, we'll get through it," soothed her father, stroking Gwen's head like a little girl. "We will not lose, not those times." "Everything will be fine," echoed the mother. "You will give birth to a child, we will help to raise it. Children are happiness." The parents didn't seem to be bothered by the upcoming difficulties or the inevitable gossip of the neighbors. Gwen understood why this was so. They had a successful youngest daughter. Even Gwen's life mistakes paled in comparison to Kimberly's achievements. On the one hand, it made life easier for the future mother. On the other hand, it made her feel even more ridiculous and stupid. As always, against Kimberly's background, Gwen was losing badly. Frustrating, painful, but familiar. Gwen's son Kyle was born at the due date. The new mother spent hours looking at his wrinkled red face, trying to see the resemblance to Sebastian. She wanted the baby to look like his father. He was just as handsome, charming, charismatic. It didn't work. Kyle didn't have those deep turquoise eyes or the open smile that made dimples form on his cheeks. A boy like a boy, short, skinny, black-haired like his grandfather. Gwen was a little hurt that her son hadn't inherited his father's spectacular looks, but it didn't affect her feelings for the kid. Gwen adored Kyle. The first time she saw her baby, she realized that from now on all her actions, her whole life, everything would be only for his sake, for the sake of this little man. While Kyle was a baby, Gwen was supported by her parents, and how else? Payments from the state are minimal, no husband, no savings too. There's no job in sight. Who needs an employee with a baby in her arms? That's how parents fed their daughter an adored grandchild. Gwen herself didn't want to sit on their backs, so as soon as the opportunity arose, she took a job as a farm laborer in the cow barn. Kyle was too young for daycare. He was left in the care of his grandparents. They did not want to see him, and Gwen decided to work. After all, her baby needs the best toys, beautiful clothes, traveling. She accepted that Kyle was growing up without a father, but the boy should not be in need because of his own mother's carelessness. The work was hard and physically exhausting. You had to work double shifts to make a good wage, but at least Gwen had money. Now she went into the city with Kyle every weekend. They sat in cafes, went on rides, went to the cinema, and of course visited toy shops. Gwen often let her son choose what he wanted: an expensive radio-controlled car, an imported constructor, huge sets of soldiers. For the sake of this, Gwen literally bent her back at work. But most importantly, a happy gleam in the eyes of the only child. "You spoil him?" Sometimes shook his head. "Father, you cannot so. All for Kyle, you forget about yourself, and after all, young still quite." "I don't need anything." Gwen shrugged her shoulders. "The main thing is for my son to be happy." "Son," said the father. "Son should have learned to work by now. He won't wash his plate or clean his room. You and your grandmother do everything for him. You're raising a lazy boss. It's not good for a man." What are you? Immediately joined loving grandmother. "Still has time to work. Let him enjoy his childhood." Gwen fully shared her mother's opinion and supported her. Father, on the arguments of women, only waved his hand and silently went out into the street. Sometimes he would say something like, "You can't be argued with." Gwen was irritated by her father's behavior, and it was only after 10 years that she realized how right he was. Blinded by her love for her only son, Gwen hadn't seen or noticed much, and now she was reaping the benefits. Kyle grew up a bright but lazy boy. At school, at first, he grasped everything quickly and was an excellent student without much difficulty. Gwen hoped he'd taken after Kimberly. She already held a post in the Scientific Academy, published in magazines. In general, was almost a celebrity, at least in scientific circles, certainly. But it was impossible to ride out all his school years on cleverness and memory. It was time to work, to teach, to delve into complex formulas, to make an effort. Kyle didn't want to do that at all, and problems began: twos, absences, unwillingness to go to this stupid school at all. Kyle gave a lot of arguments for the fact that in the modern world a person can get a good job and without education, and Gwen's heart was bleeding because her son was so untalented and stupidly ruining his abilities. The strict grandfather tried to educate his grandson, who had lost his hands. This time his mother and grandmother did not interfere with him. They kept aside, but it was too late. For Kyle, there were no authority figures anymore. The kid had gotten mixed up with a bad crowd. They were teenagers from not too well-off families. Gwen talked to her son a lot, tried to call him to order, but it was all in vain. Kyle was convinced that he knew best how to behave. "What can you teach me?" He questioned his mother. "You live in poverty. You don't have a decent education. You spend your life shoveling manure on the farm for pennies. Parents should bring up by example, by example, by example. You understand? I don't want to live like you. It's not much of an example. So I'm looking for other ways." Gwen had nothing to say to her rapidly growing son. All she could do was hope that everything would be all right with him. He'd grow up, he'd understand, he'd wise up. The year in which Kyle was to graduate from high school had brought Gwen many losses. First, just after New Year's Eve, her father left. He'd long had a strange cough and difficulty breathing. but wrote it off to the fact that he'd been a lifelong smoker. It turned out to be his heart. The heart attack happened in the morning. The ambulance did not even have time to bring the patient to the hospital. After his grandfather's death, Kyle went wild. The man, though elderly, had at least somehow restrained him, but now the guy had no breaks at all. He could spend nights out with his new friends, come home drunk and demand money from his mother and grandmother for fun. Kyle became rude, abrasive, a complete stranger. Neither persuasion nor threats worked on him. Gwen, who was still longing for her father, felt that she was losing her son, and only her mother gave her hope with her words that the boy would get over it. He is of such an age, he is growing up without a father. Nothing is difficult for him. He'll have to calm down. I've seen a lot of that in my time.
And indeed, by the middle of the year, Kyle had suddenly grown up. He'd just graduated high school, got his C grade. His grades were given only for his past merits, and thanks to his mother, who ran after the teachers and school administration with gifts at the end of the year.
Kyle suddenly seemed to appreciate that his mother and grandmother had done a lot for him, became more serious, even asked for forgiveness from his relatives. Gwen's heart sang, Mum was right. Kyle has changed as he's grown up. I decided to go to college, City College, to be a welder. It's a great trade, his mother and grandmother chorused in agreement. They would have been happy with any choice Kyle made. The main thing was that the boy realized the importance of education. He'd learn, he'd get a trade, he'd have a good, settled life. Kyle left, easily got into college, started an independent life in a college dormitory. Gwen breathed a sigh of relief. Everything seemed to be falling into place. And then a new blow. Her elderly mother fell ill on New Year's Eve, fever, cough. Nothing special, as if Gwen took care of her. Thought the usual seasonal cold, but the old woman became worse and worse. A doctor was called. He immediately heard wheezing in the lungs. Her mother was admitted to hospital, diagnosed with bilateral pneumonia. Gwen was tense, of course, but not too frightened. Inflammation of the lungs is a serious thing. Nothing to say. But Mum was in hospital, under the care of doctors. Gwen did not think about bad things, but one morning she got a call from the hospital with terrible news. Her mum was gone. She'd had a sudden seizure during the night, and that was it. That's how in just a year Gwen lost both parents, her support, help, reliable rear. The woman felt like she'd had her footing knocked out from under her. She was left alone in this cruel world. A complicated life and a troubled teenager, Kyle. How she wished Sebastian was there for her right now. Yes, she still remembered the father of her child with fondness and love. Gwen needed a solid shoulder to lean on in this difficult situation. But there was no such person, there just wasn't. Kimberly was far away. Of course she would come for a while to say goodbye to her mother, but she would immediately drift off into her own life. She has a bright, full of events, intense, and Sebastian that, of course, and does not remember Gwen. I wonder how his life turned out. Surely he is happily married, the other and cannot be, and brings up children, not even suspecting that somewhere there is another son, so in need of attention and care of his father. Time passed. Gwen was getting used to her new life. The son left to study in the city. The woman still worked double shifts to provide Kyle with everything he needed. The guy needed to dress, eat, pay for textbooks and extra classes, and still and walk a young man needs. It was the height of his college years, after all. When if not now, and life in the city is not cheap. The son has not yet worked, so the mother tried for the only child. She bent over backwards and transferred most of her wages to Kyle. She doesn't need much herself, does she? Kyle's a different story. His life was just beginning. The woman still wanted her only child to have everything she needed. If you brought a man into this world, you'd better provide for him. It was unusual to be alone in an empty house. No one to talk to, no one to discuss the news of the day. Kyle, what? They called each other, of course, almost every night. He answered his mother's questions by saying he was fine, always in a hurry to get somewhere. An understandable youth. Gwen did not take offense, but felt often lonely and abandoned. During this period of life, the woman began to look after Jonathan, a former classmate, already a widower. He worked as a driver for the administration. Once upon a time, Jonathan ran after Gwen with flowers and compliments. It was in school. He was funny, insecure, ridiculous, anxious, and touching. Then young Gwen dreamed of other guys like Sebastian, handsome, stylish, smart. And Jonathan, he was too simple, short, puny, and wearing glasses. Of course, Gwen was pleased by the boy's attention, which, needless to say, pleased her ego, but nothing serious was out of the question.
Time passed. Jonathan had grown from an awkward teenager into a rather nice man and had married Sharon, a girl a grade below him. Gwen had been friends with her as a child. They were not close friends, but they often went out together, talked, shared secrets.
Jonathan and Sharon's family turned out to be exemplary, both quiet, hardworking, polite. It was hard to imagine either of them raising their voices at their spouse or children. Gwen was happy for her childhood friends. They had 2 heirs, a son and a daughter, as if by order. Parents raised their children, worked, went to the sea every summer. A house full of wealth, love, prosperity. Gwen, who was pulling her son without a husband, smiled at the happy couple. She was happy for Jonathan and Sharon, and a little envious of them. That would be the kind of family she wanted to build, preferably with Sebastian, but it didn't work out. But Jonathan and Sharon's happiness was short-lived. The young and seemingly healthy Sharon suddenly fell ill. She was fading, pale, thin, and weak. Jonathan took his wife to hospitals trying to help her. They found the cause, of course, but what good was it? Some complex genetic disease that had been dormant for some time had made its debut. Doctors had given disappointing prognoses that differed by only a couple of months. Sharon could not be helped. In the end, Jonathan was left alone with 2 children in his arms. True, the son and daughter were already old enough, but still the hopeless widower was supported by the whole village. Gwen at first also cooked dinners for the orphan of the family, and then the man came to his senses and took over the household. So slowly he raised a son and a daughter. He put the children on their feet, educated them. Both were already working and living in the city. But Jonathan did not hurry to move closer to the heirs. He had elderly parents in the village, so he looked after them. When Kyle left for school, Gwen began to notice that Jonathan was around more and more often, walking her home from work, talking about this and that, or helping her carry her bags from the shop. It was as if he happened to come across her path every now and then. Gwen didn't mind the pleasant company. They discussed the news, remembered their childhood, laughed. One day Gwen invited Jonathan to tea. The man met her from work as usual and walked her to the gate. The man agreed, and at the table Jonathan finally decided to have a serious conversation. It was obvious that this step was not easy for him. "Gwen, I've always liked you, you know that." "Well, when was that?" Gwen smiled. She hadn't realized what Jonathan was getting at. She thought they were just reminiscing about their childhood again. It had been a long time ago. Jonathan agreed, and then he looked at her seriously and added, "But nothing has changed since then." Gwen looked at the man questioningly. She didn't know what to say, but the feeling from this unexpected confession was clearly pleasant. Goosebumps ran up and down her spine, and her heart warmed. "I've been fond of you since childhood, since the 6th grade. I made up my mind to admit it in high school, but you refused me then. I pretended that I didn't care. It didn't work out, and it didn't work out, but in fact I suffered then. I can't describe it. I looked at you secretly, admired you, was jealous if any of the guys were around, and dreamed that when I graduated from school I would study, become rich, and come to pick you up in a cool car. Then you wouldn't be able to resist." Gwen smiled. The confession seemed naive and very sweet. Jonathan smiled too, remembering his young and ambitious self. "But it didn't work out," he continued. "I didn't manage to go to university. I didn't have enough brains. I learned to be a driver and returned to the village. Of course, I learned about you from my acquaintances. They said you lived in the city. They said you had a boyfriend. Well, I didn't doubt it. A pretty girl like you, how could she not have admirers? They'd be queuing up." Gwen couldn't help it and laughed out loud. Jonathan, living here in the village, thought that she was surrounded by a crowd of suitors, while Gwen suffered from loneliness and was desperately jealous of her married friends. "Oh, you have no idea how wrong you were." "Yes, you fool, I was young." Jonathan grinned. "Anyway, I decided that the train had finally left. You are in the city, you have a rich fiancé, gives you gifts, no need to check, and I suffered and felt my own inadequacy. Who was I? An ordinary driver, and you're a princess, a queen. an unattainable ideal. No match for me. Jonathan was in almost physical pain at the time. The girl he had been in love with since childhood would never be his. At that time, it seemed that there was nothing to live for. The guy worked and ate, met with friends. The world was gray and faded. Everything seemed meaningless, and then suddenly it turned out that the neighbor's daughter, Sharon, was partial to him, to Jonathan. It was an amazing discovery for the boy. Someone could love him for who he was, not too handsome, not too successful. Sharon had gone from skinny Sherry, an ungainly teenager, to a sweet girl. Big clear eyes, thick long hair, thin waist. Sharon graduated from teachers' college in the city and returned to her home in the small town. She taught school now, tutoring first graders. She walked briskly up to Jonathan on his way home from work that evening. She spotted her neighbor at the gate and told him to his face how she felt. I was stunned then. It was unexpected, and I felt sorry for her because I was in the same situation. I knew how much she hoped for my attention, and I knew how much she would be hurt by my indifference. How could I do that to a fragile Sharon in love? Anyway, Jonathan and Sharon started dating, getting to know each other, and realizing every day that they were a wonderful couple. I thought that nothing good was going to happen in my life, Jonathan said. Sharon. It was as if she pulled me out of my cocoon and showed me that happiness was still possible. Jonathan and Sharon married and had children. And then you came back to the village, confused, with a belly. I wanted to be your rock, your support, but it was too late. Sharon and I got married, we had babies. Did you still love me then? Gwen wondered. Of course. And now I love you too, but I couldn't show my feelings then. And I already had obligations to Sharon and the children. I loved all three of them very much already, and I couldn't betray my family even for my own happiness. Were you unhappy? Gwen was surprised. Jonathan's revelations had shaken her to the core. I can't say. Sharon was wonderful. I loved her in my own way. I cared for her. I was happy with her. But with you, I can't even now describe how I felt about you, and I still do. They sat for a while longer. Jonathan looked at Gwen, waiting for some sign from her. The woman, she didn't realize her own feelings. She was pleased that there was a man who loved her so much. A warmth developed on her soul from it. After the death of her parents, Gwen was left all alone. A son in town, a sister abroad. There were no people to care for Gwen, to try to please her, to take an interest in her well-being, after all. And then there was Jonathan, in love, devoted, good, reliable. But something was stopping Gwen. Kyle. How would he feel about this turn of events? I'm sure he won't approve. He'll say that her mother is crazy. In her old age, she's having an affair. Only the desire to be with not indifferent person. It gradually overcame. Gwen often thought about how good it would be if they lived together. Jonathan would be happy. That's for sure. And how nice it was to know that you could make someone so happy. Anyway, that night, the former classmates decided to give it a go. To try being a couple. Well, I'll ask you out tomorrow, Jonathan summarized with a smile. The dream of my youth will finally come true. It will come true. Gwen nodded deliberately. The next day they went into the city. They wandered around the park, talked, sat in cafes, and then went to the cinema. During the show, Jonathan took Gwen's hand and held it for an hour and a half, until the film was over. The woman didn't mind. She liked the feeling. At last she wasn't alone. A week later, Jonathan moved in with her. Immediately he fixed the long leaking tap, tightened the hinges on all the interior doors. They were finally creak-free, and Gwen started cooking again. She was too lazy to do it for herself, but now Jonathan was with her, and the woman pleased him with delicious dishes. The only question on Gwen's mind was, how will Kyle feel about all this? He didn't know yet, did he? The son rarely came to visit his mother. They talked on the phone more and more. So Gwen was holding back, not telling Kyle about the changes that had taken place in her life. Jonathan, he immediately informed both his son and daughter. Gwen realized they were happy for their father. The woman wished her own son's reaction would be the same, but there was little hope of that. Several years passed. Gwen still hadn't decided to have a serious conversation with her son. It wasn't hard to hide the details of her personal life. Her son had little interest in what was going on with his mother. He usually only called to ask for money. But one day Kyle did come. It was amazing. It had been a long time since the son had graced his mother with his presence, and now he showed up. Hi. Gwen was both excited and a little confused. Jonathan hadn't come home from work yet, but his things were everywhere. It was impossible not to notice that someone else was living in the house. Hi, Kyle said glumly. He didn't look too shabby, pale, worried. I need money. Gwen knew immediately that something serious had happened. What's going on? She asked, clutching at her heart. Something stabbing in her chest. Is there something wrong with school? I haven't studied in a while, Kyle mumbled under his breath. How? Like this. I got expelled for truancy. I've been working hard, and I can't get money from you. I sent you most of my salary every month, Gwen reminded him. It wasn't money for the city. It was nothing. Kyle sighed. I didn't have enough. So I did the best I could. Other people's parents are well off. They have cars, flats, and money for entertainment. I felt like a beggar all the time. Do you think that's nice? Gwen was hurt to hear these words. She'd spent her whole life working hard for her son. She wanted Kyle to have the best of everything, and now it turns out he feels miserable. It turns out Gwen's not doing her job as a parent, and Kyle's even out of college. So what now? Gwen asked. I got into debt. Kyle explained. I wanted to start a business to raise money, and I ended up in debt. They're charging me a lot of money, threatening to kill me. Where am I going to get it? So I came to you for help. Son, you know I don't have anything. What do you mean, you don't have anything? Kyle was surprised. What about this house? What do you want us to do? Sell the house? Well, what's the solution, Mom? I'll pay off my debts, we'll rent a flat together, we'll live in the city. Why? Are you going to take a well-deserved holiday soon? There's no couch in town, of course, but I'll get you a job in an outlier. My grandmother told me that you used to be a dressmaker, and now this labor pays well. We'll live together in the city. You and me like we used to be. Wouldn't that be nice? Gwen couldn't agree with her son. A couple of years ago, she would have happily supported Kyle's idea. Living alone in an empty house was unbearable, but now that she had Jonathan, they were good together. It was nice to have a loving, understanding person around. So what now? Kyle finally noticed the men's things in the rooms. Jonathan's jacket hung on the wall, his trousers were on the chair, and his size 43 trainers were by the front door. What's that? Kyle asked, looking at his mother in amazement. Did you have someone? I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. I've had this happen here. I see. He shook his head and sighed sadly. You're getting on with your life. Yes, of course you don't have a son to worry about. You know I'm not. Gwen objected softly. She could see that Kyle was depressed and troubled. He needed help, and she, the mother, would certainly lend her shoulder to him in his time of need. Who else would? Son, I'll do whatever you say. And Gwen did. She sold the house, gave most of the proceeds to her son. Used the rest to buy a tiny flat on the outskirts of town, in an old house. Jonathan, he'd suggested options, wanted to give Kyle into his savings. There was less than he needed, but it still turned out to be a fairly decent amount. Gwen didn't agree. Jonathan shouldn't have to solve her problems, their problems. He had children of his own. Using a man in this situation is despicable. Stay with me, Jonathan pleaded with her. Gwen had already packed her things at that time. The suitcases stood in the hay and waited for tomorrow morning. Kyle had booked a taxi for his mother by 10 a.m. You know I can't. I know, but I don't understand. You gave him money, you bought him a place to live, but why would you want to be there? Stay with me. I've got a big house, plenty of room, you know. We had a good time together, didn't we? We were. Gwen agreed. Yes, in the few years that they had lived with Jonathan, the woman had become accustomed to warmth, care, acceptance. It was very pleasant. They would go out together in the evenings, discuss things. Jonathan looked at Gwen with loving eyes and she felt happy, but now everything was different. Gwen saw that her son was not well, too anxious, too restless. There was clearly something not good going on in his life. Yes, Kyle is an adult. Jonathan is partly right when he says that he should deal with his own problems. But when Gwen was in a difficult situation, she didn't deal with her own problems. Her parents had helped her a lot. Jonathan assured her that it was a different story. A young, single woman with a baby in her arms and a grown man who had been given money from the sale of her house by her mother. Gwen couldn't agree with him. It's fine for him to talk. He's got both his son and daughter retired, working good jobs with families. There was no telling how Jonathan would sing if one of his children was in a situation like Kyle's. And Gwen was also elementally afraid of losing her last place to live. Now that she didn't have the home she had spent her childhood in, the woman began to worry about old age. It wouldn't be long before she would be elderly and possibly helpless. How would she be without a corner of her own if Kyle couldn't be looked after? I mean, he's going to lose that flat in the old building too. Anyway, we need to find out what's going on in his life. Maybe it's time to save his son. He himself will not confess, but when they start living together, Gwen will understand everything, will see everything herself. She cannot leave her only child alone with his problems and troubles. Why are you so worried? Gwen smiled at Jonathan. The smile came out sad, the woman realized, even without a mirror. I'm not moving to the moon or even to another continent. The city is near. Distance is not an obstacle to feelings. We'll meet, communicate. Of course we will, Jonathan sighed. But you know it's not the same thing. What can you do? It's just the way life is. Gwen moved to the city and started to organize her new home with enthusiasm. There was only one room in the flat, and it went, of course, to Kyle, and Gwen settled in the kitchen. She bought a cot, which she put by the window at night and put away in the pantry in the morning. Jonathan, he came often at first. They walked along the seafront as before, sat in cafes. With him, Gwen felt invaluable, important, loved, not like at home. Jonathan urged her to move in with him. Well, you do not want to come to me. Let's go somewhere else, rent a flat, start life anew, try. But Gwen couldn't leave her son now. After living with him for a while, the woman realized Kyle had a serious drinking problem. He drank a lot, came home in the morning. His mother did not sleep, worried about what could happen to a drunken son at such a time, beat someone or hit by a car, or even taken to the police. Then, strange as it may sound, Gwen got used to it. Kyle's nocturnal escapades no longer bothered her so much, they became routine. Her son would sleep until dinner, and then he would be sick, and then the caring mother would bring her son pills in time, give him mineral water, clean up after him. Without her, he probably won't survive. Because the disease progressed, Kyle drank more and more and degraded literally before her eyes, becoming stupid, aggressive, helpless. Gwen blamed herself. Who else could she blame? It was her fault that Kyle's childhood had been spent without a father. What is it like for a child, especially a boy, to grow up without a male example in front of his eyes and without a father's care? And Kyle was born to a man Gwen didn't know at all. Maybe that handsome Sebastian was an alcoholic or one of his relatives? Gwen thought that addiction to alcohol was often passed down through genes, and now Kyle was suffering because of her, because of his careless, stupid mother. Gwen tried her best to make her son's existence easier, feeding him on her own money and generally becoming a servant for Kyle. He did nothing at all around the house, only demanded. Gwen realized that Kyle didn't hold down any jobs because of his drinking habits. Of course, who wants an employee who can go on a bender at any time? Before the man started living with his mother, he was still trying to get his head round, and then he relaxed. Indeed, why bother if you are not going to be hungry anyway? His mother bought groceries and cooked delicious lunches and dinners of several dishes. Kyle didn't bother to work. After a while, the son began to demand money from his mother when he did not have enough for a drink, and it happened quite often because the man earned a living by rare part-time jobs, which were not every day. The soul demanded hot drinks on a regular basis. Gwen, feeling sorry for her son, at first gave him money for pocket money, and then she tried to stop giving him money, but Kyle still took her relative's money. Sometimes he slowly took money out of his mother's purse, Sometimes he got his way by threats and rudeness. Gwen felt miserable and confused. Life with her own son had become a nightmare. Kyle could yell at his mother, sass her at the drop of a hat. He took her money, so the woman tried, having received payment, immediately make a stock of food for a long time. The adult son had not yet raised his hand on his elderly parent, but looking into Kyle's empty, embittered eyes, Gwen realized that the moment was not far off. The only outlet for Gwen was walks with Jonathan. He still visited her in town whenever he could. The woman didn't tell him about her life. It was embarrassing, hard, and she couldn't share it with anyone. In front of others, Gwen put on the mask of a prosperous and quite happy woman. One day Jonathan gave Gwen news that made her heart ache. "I'm moving soon," he said, looking away. "We won't be able to see each other much." Unfortunately, where Gwen gasped. Lately she'd only felt human around Jonathan, and now it looked like their meetings were about to end. "To the sea, to Florida," he answered. "With my son's family. You know I have lung problems. The doctor advised me to change the climate otherwise. Well, never mind. My son decided to move with me too. My daughter is still thinking about it, but it looks like she'll decide too. So that's it." "Oh, that's a shame." Gwen was upset. She tried to fight the tears that came treacherously to her eyes. "I'm really going to miss you. Gwen, I'm begging you so much, come with me. You helped your son to solve problems when he was in a difficult situation. Now he will swim out on his own and not a little one in you. We will live by the sea. Just imagine what happiness it is. Think about it." Gwen realized that she wouldn't go anywhere. How would she leave her son? Jonathan just didn't know anything about Kyle's addiction, or the fact that he hadn't been earning much for a long time. Without his mother, Kyle would be lost, completely lost. And how could she enjoy the sea, the sun, and the company of a loving Jonathan, knowing that her son was dying alone in a distant city? Jonathan was gone. Gwen took his absence hard. They called each other, corresponded of course. Jonathan sent pictures of marvelous landscapes and still called Gwen to him. He described how good they would be together, but the woman felt responsible for her son. She gave birth, did not give the appropriate upbringing, so she should be near, help, support. Sometimes because of these thoughts the woman felt terrible, but she could not do anything about it. A few more years passed. Gwen had grown old. She probably could have looked better and younger, but not with this life. Kyle continued to drink and adamantly refused treatment. He started taking company home, and it was much harder than when Gwen waited nights for her son. These people, marginal-looking women, downcast men, laughed loudly in Kyle's room, drank, swore, even fought sometimes. When Gwen tried to reason with her son, he snapped at her. He stopped seeing his mother as a person altogether, and then Marion, Kyle's common-law wife, showed up at the flat. There was no hope that she would have a positive effect on her son. Marion was a drinker herself. While Kyle usually didn't touch his mother, except when he needed money, Marion clung to Kyle's mother on and off. Eventually, she'd managed to turn Kyle against Gwen, too. He was now convinced that his mother intended to break him up with his beloved and hated Marion in general. Scolding, quarrels, scandals, all this now waited for Gwen every day, and her son was not saved, and with Jonathan, personal happiness did not build, but could now live with a man who loved her all her life on the beach. It's a fairy tale. But what about Kyle, without her supervision? No, she gave a man life. She's got to take responsibility for him now. I guess that's her lot in life. The rain had eased considerably, and Gwen took advantage of the respite to get to the driveway. This time she was in a hurry, in case it rained again. She couldn't wait to get back, but she had nowhere to go. Looks like Marion and Kyle are having company again tonight. They'll be hanging out in the only room till morning, and they'll be going to the kitchen to the fridge. Gwen's just about to fill it up with groceries, which will be great. Tomorrow we'll probably have to go to the shop again, if there's any money left. Gwen will lie on her cot all night, pretending to sleep, and listen to the sounds of the merry party in the next room. Her main task now is not to disturb her son Marion and their guests. When she reached her floor on foot, as there had never been a lift in this old house, the old woman stopped at the door like a stumbling block. On the landing were her suitcases, the same ones she'd moved here with from the village. Gwen opened one of them. There lay her belongings, nothing incomprehensible. The woman tried to open the door with her key, no luck. Someone had snapped the lock so it wouldn't open from the outside. So Gwen knocked loudly. The bell hadn't worked for a long time. The door swung open, and there stood Marion, happy, arms at her sides, feet shoulder-width apart. She was smiling strangely. "What's the matter?" Gwen asked. "You're moving out," you old hag, Marion said in a luscious voice. "This is my flat. Why would I want to leave?" "It's not yours, it's Kyle's, it's registered to him. I saw the paperwork myself the other day. You're a nobody, so get out of here." Kyle's head peeked out from behind Marion. "Yeah, Mum, we've decided that you need to leave. You don't give us a life, you're always sticking your nose in our business, giving us advice. And you're trying to get Marion and me to break up, so we'd better get our own place. And what are you going to live on?" Gwen did not understand. She has long realized that her son does not have any warm feelings for her, but he needed his mother at least as a source of funding. "You don't know anything." Marion smirked. "I'm expecting a baby I'm due in a couple of months. I've already got sick pay, maternity pay, and then every month for the baby, so we're in the clear." Gwen looked at her sister-in-law's figure. Yes, her belly did stand out under the dirty sweatshirt, but Marion had never been particularly slim, so the woman didn't notice anything. "That's news to me. Kyle and Marion are having a baby, poor baby. What's it like growing up with parents like that? And will that baby even survive?" Gwen's eyes darkened at the news. The news of the baby overshadowed even the fact that she was being kicked out of her own home. She felt unbearably sorry for this unborn baby, grandson or granddaughter. At the same time, the woman realized that she was unable to save him, to make his life even a little easier. She would have to deal with her own fate. "So get out of here," Marion smiled again. "Son, where am I supposed to go?" Gwen turned to Kyle. "You can't live on the street. You have a lover in the village. Go to him." Kyle waved her off carelessly. "You've got somewhere to go. Don't be poor." Of course, Kyle didn't know that Jonathan had moved to Florida, but he'd never been interested in his mother's affairs. "And you have a rich sister. She won't leave you," Marion added and slammed the door shut. Gwen picked up her suitcases and went outside. What else could she do? She had no idea where to go. Jonathan was far away, Sister Kimberly even farther away. No one wanted her, alone, abandoned. Now she was homeless. She must have deserved it somehow. "I'm ashamed to even tell people I know how life has turned out." Native son, for whom her mother only lived and kicked out of the house. Gwen walked for a long time wherever she looked. The rain had stopped, but there was a piercing icy wind. It burned her cheeks and made her eyes water. It was darkening rapidly. There were hardly any people on the streets. Gwen was finally exhausted. She put her suitcases near an empty bus stop, sat on them, and let the tears flow. They poured down her cheeks, and the woman didn't even wipe her face. She wept for her unfulfilled hopes for her son. She wept for Kyle's plight and her unborn grandson. Well, and her own future, of course, caused anxiety and apprehension. Where to go, who to ask for help. Staying outside on a cold November night is a pleasure. "What's the matter with you?" A pleasant young girl's voice came from somewhere behind her. Gwen turned round sharply. A young woman was looking at her. Tall, skinny, tight jeans, trainers, a deep hooded sweatshirt and eyes, attentive, sympathetic eyes. Next to the stranger, a small, funny-looking pug was worrying. He whined amusingly and seemed to be looking at Gwen with sympathy too. His alien, sympathetic face looked so funny that the older woman couldn't help but smile through her tears. Rachel was born into a student family. Her mom was an economist, her dad an engineer. The young parents met at a student disco. They immediately noticed each other, then fell in love and got married. Rachel was born when both were in their 4th year, each at their own university. The young family was not discouraged. Yes, they earned little. Yes, they had to live with a child in a cramped room in the student dormitory, but ahead of the couple had so much. They dreamed, planned, hoped. Rachel did not remember her parents at all, saw their photos, listened to the stories of relatives and acquaintances about these people. That's how the image of her mother and father formed in her head. Cheerful, energetic, working, a little naive, loving each other and the child. Tragedy struck at a construction site. Rachel's mother and father, trying to earn an extra penny after their studies and main job, were looking for a part-time job. That time they managed to get a job with a private contractor who was building a sports complex in the city center. Young spouses together with a couple of similar students painted the walls. And something happened. Either the cable broke or the platform failed. All in all four of them fell from a height right onto the concrete floor. No one survived. There was no chance. The owner of the construction site managed to get away with it. The students worked for him unofficially, and he made it look as if the young people had sneaked into his construction site to take extreme photos or something like that. A friend of her parents, the family's dormitory neighbor, was babysitting little Rachel at the time. The girl spent a few days with her. Then she was supposed to be taken to an orphanage, but her father's sister, Aunt Scarlett, turned up. She lived in the country, raising her 3 children alone. She wasn't poor, but her family wasn't exactly wealthy. An extra mouth in the form of a niece orphaned overnight was a burden to Aunt Scarlett. But what could she do? What would people say? Abandoned her brother's daughter, sent the child to an orphanage. The neighbors will turn on her. They'll remember it for the rest of their lives, and their conscience will bother them. That's how Rachel ended up with Aunt Scarlett's family. The girl's childhood was, at first glance, the most ordinary. Rachel helped her aunt with the household chores, along with her children. She played outside, went to school with her friends, but no birthdays with a lot of friends and a cake with candles, no new beautiful dresses, trips to the amusement park. And what is their dresses? Rachel lacked the banal warmth hugs, affectionate words of support. Aunt Scarlett was not strict or angry, but she was not in a hurry to surround her nephew with love and care. Aunt Scarlett looked at them differently, stroked their heads, hugged them, and found tender words for them. Rachel, she always felt like a stranger to her aunt, and as she grew older she realized she was a burden to Aunt Scarlett. Growing up with the realization of her own irrelevance was hard. The girl sometimes felt sorry for Aunt Scarlett. She was so tired at work and with her own children, and then her niece fell on her head. Rachel dreamed of growing up and having a family of her own. There she would be loved and appreciated for real. Rachel always spent a lot of time studying. Firstly, she liked to learn new things, and the girl did it well. She was an excellent student all the years. Secondly, Rachel understood that education is her only chance for a prosperous life. The girl wanted to leave the village, to settle in the city, to travel the world. For all this she needed money, so she tried. After school, Rachel entered the university as a translator. She was given a dormitory, and her free life began. At last, she wasn't a burden to anyone. Rachel did not pay attention to boys in her youth. She firmly decided for herself, first her career, then everything else, but in the last year of her studies she accidentally met Oliver. He was 8 years older. An accomplished, self-confident, handsome, intelligent man stopped by the university to talk to the rector. Oliver had his own travel agency. He needed intelligent interpreters, and they bumped into each other near the rector's office. Literally bumped into each other. Oliver swung the doors open and took a step into the corridor and crashed into Rachel, who was walking past. The man immediately picked the girl up, preventing her from falling, and began to apologize. Rachel assured him with a smile that she was fine, amused by the man's consternation. He acted as if he hadn't accidentally hit her with his shoulder, but had almost hit her with a car, and then, like a corny scene from a novel, their eyes met, and Rachel's breath caught. Oliver felt something too. There was a spark between the young people. Anyway, they went to the window and talked for a long time. They exchanged phone numbers, of course, and in the evening he picked Rachel up and they went for a walk around the city. The girl herself chose such a format of the first date. Rachel-Oliver's relationship, Rachel-Oliver, quickly became close and very serious. Soon the girl moved to his flat, a spacious 3-room flat in the city center. At first the girl was frightened and confused by the fact that her chosen one is so rich. He has his own travel agency, a beautiful car, an expensive flat. And she is a girl from the village, without a yard even her parents do not have. An orphan from Kazan, but Oliver was not embarrassed by all this. He looked at Rachel with admiring eyes, showered her with gifts and compliments. The girl saw that her very presence made him happy and finally allowed herself to just be happy and not worry about anything. After a while, Rachel realized that she was expecting a child. She was confused, of course, because everything was too quick and unplanned. Oliver was genuinely happy. His business was doing well, his capital was increasing, and his business was developing. Children are happiness, the man smiled, stroking Rachel's still quite flat tummy. Rachel thought that after the news of her pregnancy, Oliver would finally propose to her, but he was in no hurry to propose. When she herself asked him about it when they would legitimize their relationship, Oliver was genuinely surprised. Why would that be? Well, as the child should have a full family, mom, dad. Ah, that, the child I recognize legally, do not doubt, and the stamp and the passport. These are such conventions. You know, I was married, and the relationship went sour just after the official marriage. Then there was so much trouble with reissuing documents and so on. So I'm against such conventions. The statement of her beloved then shook Rachel, but she coped with herself and accepted Oliver's point of view. Indeed, it does not matter whether there is a stamp in the passport, the main thing that they love each other. Catherine was born on her due date and made Rachel the happiest person on earth. The young mom couldn't look at her daughter and didn't understand where such a miracle had come from. Oliver was not a very attentive father. In general, since the birth of the child, he became somehow distant. Only Rachel, blinded by the new happiness of motherhood, did not immediately notice it. One day, Catherine was then only 2 years old. The man said that he was leaving. I leave the flat to my daughter. I will support her all her life and communicate with the child too. But with you, I can no longer live. I'm sorry, I fell out of love. I met someone else. It happens. Oliver left, leaving Rachel in upset feelings. She felt like half her heart had been ripped out of her chest. She'd loved Oliver so much, she'd hoped they'd be okay. She had to adjust to the new reality. Oliver wasn't lying. He left the flat to his daughter and correctly transferred the alimony for her maintenance. But the woman understood that she had to urgently find a source of income. Oliver's money, they were only for the daughter. Rachel needs to work, need to be in the profession. As practice showed, in this life, one has to rely only on oneself. Rachel realized that, in general, she was still very lucky. Oliver left his daughter a flat and remitted child support. It was a small amount of money, but it was still a pain in her chest. The pain of the breakup was not going away, and the future seemed very vague. It is necessary to go to work, but it so happened that Rachel immediately after university gave birth to a daughter and therefore did not have time to get a job, and now with a small child in her arms, and without experience, who needs her? Rachel has no relatives, no mom, no sister, no grandmother, no one who could look after Catherine while her mother is at work. Send the child to a kindergarten, but Catherine will be sick a lot there. The employer is unlikely to like an employee who does not get out of sick leave. The situation seemed hopeless. That November evening, Rachel was just thinking about her future. She was thinking about how she could get a job. There was not enough money to live on. She had to deny herself everything. She couldn't and wouldn't ask Oliver for more money. He left them a whole flat and gives them money to support their daughter. And if Rachel couldn't provide for herself, it was her problem. She's not a child anymore, she's an adult. At this point, Princess, the pug that Oliver had given Rachel once, when everything was still good with them, the dog was asking to go outside. What a bad time. It's dark and cold and there are puddles all around. The rain had recently let up, but where to go? Princess can't wait. Catherine has already slept in her room. She will wake up only in the morning. So Rachel can calmly walk the dog. The girl quickly dressed, attached the collar at Princess' leash, and went out into the straight November evening. The old woman sitting on the suitcases near the bus stop Rachel noticed from afar and could not believe her eyes. It looked too strange. She approached and looked closely and realized that the old woman was very upset about something. She was crying quietly, not even noticing that her face was already wet with tears. Rachel's heart squeezed with pity for a stranger who was obviously in great distress. "What's wrong? Do you need help?" When she heard Gwen's story, Rachel was horrified. She had longed for a mother, for a close relative. She couldn't imagine how Kyle could do this to her mum, her own mum. Rachel hadn't hesitated for a second in making that offer. The words came out of her mouth before she had a chance to think them through. "Come to my place now, you're very cold. You need a mug of hot tea, you can't stay outside." A year had passed since that meeting. Gwen went to live with Rachel. On that cold, dark evening, over a cup of hot tea, a decision was formed that suited both parties to the unusual story. Gwen now looked after the house and enjoyed chatting with Catherine, who loved her new grandmother. Rachel calmly went to work, knowing that her little girl was in safe and loving hands. Next to Rachel, finally there was a person who loved and cared for her, Gwen. And she was getting the maternal warmth she had missed all her life. But her daughter now had a wonderful grandmother who would entertain, feed, and teach. Kyle showed up. One day he found out somehow where his mother lived. He demanded Gwen come home, appealed to her sense of family. "What, you care about strangers more than your own son?" "It happens." Gwen shook her head. "I know that now. Sometimes strangers are closer than family, and Rachel and I aren't strangers anymore." Kyle kicked Marion out. Their baby was never born. Marion, being pregnant, was not going to give up her bad habits, so naturally her body couldn't take it anymore. The baby was born prematurely. It was a very weak and painful boy. He did not survive. Plans of the parents of the unfortunate crumb on the allowance from the state hit a snag, so Kyle came crawling to his mother. He needed her money again. He still didn't want to work. But this time, Gwen was firm. No. Jonathan was right. Her son was a grown man. She'd done more than she could for him. She'd sold her only home so he could buy a flat in the city and pay his debts. Let him take it from there. Speaking of Jonathan, Gwen did tell him her story. She got over herself, she was immediately relieved, and Jonathan finally understood her. He came to Gwen's house, met Rachel and Catherine. All four of them got along very well. It was a nice group of people, heartfelt. Catherine even began to call Jonathan grandfather, but he did not object. On the contrary, it was obvious that he enjoyed it. "I invite all three of you to visit me this summer," Jonathan said before leaving. "No refusal is accepted." "No refusal is planned." Gwen smiled. Jonathan left. Summer is coming. Rachel and Gwen are making plans for a wonderful holiday in Florida, with Jonathan and his whole family waiting for them. It's going to be a wonderful holiday, and who knows, maybe they'll move to Florida during the holidays and see what's what. Rachel's going to try and get a job and have a holiday and get to know the area. They could do it. And why? Living by the sea, surrounded by people you love and love you, isn't that happiness? It was already raining for the second day. The sky was gray and dull, and the light drizzle was dreary. The wipers in John's car were running non-stop, and it annoyed him a little. There was a small traffic jam in Times Square, and while the cars were still moving, he decided to pull out his cell phone and see who had called him. There weren't many calls, one from his mom, one from a coworker, and 2 missed calls from Michael, a childhood friend he hadn't seen in a week. Ignoring the others, John dialed his friend's number. "Hey, what's up? Did something happen to you? Are you asking me? What's your problem? Where'd you get lost? You don't even call. You know what my situation is right now? I don't have any time. No, that won't do. I know you're in trouble, but you need to rest. Besides, I think it would be good for you. By the way, I want you to meet my girlfriend. It's a shame you're coming alone. We're very worried and sympathetic to Sarah." Sarah. Yeah, that tragedy happened 6 months ago, and now John was feeling guilty. "I don't know. I'll come over if I can." "Where to?" "Come to our old place at the club and we'll sit and talk for a while. Because I haven't seen you in a while." "Okay, if I can make it, I'll be there." Finally, the cars started. John turned off and thought. It was raining then, too. He and Sarah had gotten married and thought there would be no end to their happiness. He knew he had found the one and only person he would spend the rest of his life with. And he knew Sarah felt the same way because she loved him. But then tragedy struck, splitting their lives in half before and after. He was at fault for the accident. He lost control of the car. Only John didn't get a scratch, but Sarah was very badly hurt. After the doctors gave the verdict that she would never walk, Sarah told him not to suffer with her and sent her to her mother in the village, and he went on with his life. "Are you crazy? I can't live without you. You're my life. so I won't let you go anywhere. I'll do everything I can to make you well." He took her to their apartment, hired a nurse, and he went to work to buy medicine for his wife. And now 6 months had passed. John realized that he was tired. He no longer wanted to go home, to see the loving eyes of Sarah, who looked at him with adoration. He didn't understand what he wanted at all, but he knew for sure not the life he had now. But why did this happen to me? John thought. I'm still very young. I have everything ahead of me, and I'm like tied up sitting next to a disabled wife. I'm sick of everything. He slapped the steering wheel angrily, then remembered where he was and pulled himself together. I'm still going to see my friend, he said aloud to himself. I don't have to sit glued to my sick wife. You just don't tell John anything yet. I don't want to mislead him yet. Let's just make sure we're not imagining this and that I'm actually feeling better. Sarah lay on the bed and read a book. The daily exercises she had been doing with her nurse were slowly paying off. Thank you, Emily. I'm so grateful to you for practicing with me. Okay, Sarah. Except I called the doctor, and Dr. Smith is coming over tomorrow. He's going to take a look at the results and give us further instructions. Okay, Emily, whatever you say. I'll be patient. For John's sake, for my own sake, I'll do whatever it takes to get better. My dear, you'll see you'll be fine. The important thing is to be patient. I know you're in terrible pain, but you have to be patient. And then, it's not that fast. You've already got you're making progress, not progress. So don't get too excited. You and I have a lot of work to do. It's already evening. Do you need to rest? That's fine. Now I gotta go. I'll give you a little pillow lift and a book to read while your husband arrives. I've got a lot to do today. Didn't you say anything? Maybe there's something I can help you with. Sarah, I've got a lot of problems that no one can solve but me. So I'm gonna run. Thank you, Sarah, but I can manage on my own. Emily was already near the door when she heard those words. She turned around and looked closely at this charming girl she'd been studying with for months. She was struck by her resilience, her vitality, her patience, and her love for everything around her. Her gaze fell on the photograph that stood on the nightstand next to the bed. It was their wedding day. They were so happy then, and it seemed to them that nothing could interfere with their happiness. John had been pursuing Sarah for a long time, and his friend Michael was in love with her too. But she chose John because she liked him for his ardor and some childish naivety. She walked over to Sarah again, adjusted the pillows, and walked out the door. Sarah was left alone in the room. She looked at the clock again and sighed. John would be here soon. They would talk. She'll ask how he's doing at work. Sympathize because she knows exactly how hard it is for him. But as soon as Sarah and John got married, Michael tried to stay out of Sarah's sight and only dated John. At first this hurt her a little, but then she realized that it was probably for the best for all of them. Michael, of course, immediately stepped aside when he realized that Sarah had chosen his best friend and did not interfere with them. She was worried about him because she treated him like a friend. But he answered her then that everything was fine, and that soon he too would find a decent girl and they would all get married and be family friends. It wasn't John's fault. It was raining and very slippery. The car skidded and we went into a ravine. But it's over. I'm alive, and I'm okay. When she had her accident, Michael had rushed to the hospital too. He held her hand and cried. He said he would never have let that happen to her. Michael didn't say anything back then, so she didn't insist. She was comfortable when he was around. But she loved John. Sarah, you don't understand. I don't care what the doctors say. I know you're going to be okay. I believe that. You should too. By the way, did you find a girlfriend? The club was noisy. John squeezed through the crowd and finally saw a group of 4 people at a table. There was Michael, Danny, and 2 girls. The room was quiet as the minutes passed, and Sarah felt sleepy. She wanted to lie down, but the pillows were in the way, and she couldn't move them. John was still gone, and her mind was spinning with dark thoughts. But Sarah pushed them away and forced herself to think only good thoughts. We wanted some privacy, Michael said, smiling, and gave John his hand to say hello. I'm glad you took the time to stop by. I know you don't have much time, but I just wanted to see you. How are you doing? How's Sarah? Well, I finally found you. Why did you take a table so far away from the entrance? He sat down at the table and gestured to the waiter, glancing at Michael's companion. The girl was gorgeous. Of course, her black hair fell in beautiful waves to her shoulders, and her eyes were huge. And her lips made John's insides rise. He averted his gaze and looked at Michael, who was watching him intently. The same. The doctors don't say anything good, John said grimly. It's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a three-way street. But I can't take it anymore. I have to find something else. I'm working like an ox, and I'm getting paid nothing compared to what I'm making. This is my girlfriend, Dinah. She and I have been dating for a month now. I've been calling you, but you haven't been picking up the phone lately. My parents helped me. They realize I can't do my job without a car. And after that accident, my car was beyond repair. So they bought me a car. If we saw each other more often, you'd know that. How are you doing? Well, that said, you did buy yourself a nice car. Do you want me to be your subordinate? I don't feel like it, but it's a tempting offer. I'll take it if you make me your deputy. I'm doing great. I'm expanding my business a little bit. Hey, John, why don't you come work for me? It's a lot of work, and you might have to work for 5 people, but you'll make twice as much as you did at your job. How about you? I'm in. Can I think about it? John asked. Look how fast you are. No, John, I can't. I've got a trusted and reliable man in there. But we'll see how you do in the future. Maybe you'll get something for yourself. In the meantime, it's on my terms. John nodded, looking at Dinah again. She was looking at him too, just not with as much attention as he was. And he couldn't take his eyes off her. He liked her. Michael had always had great taste, always had beautiful girls around him. And he was the first to meet Sarah. He said he'd fallen in love and that it would last a lifetime. John fell in love when he saw her too. Now something was happening to him. He didn't want to go home, and he didn't want to see Sarah. Not for long. I already needed a man yesterday, so you have until tomorrow. Got it? Look, let's not wait till tomorrow. Since I'm here, I'll answer right away. I'll do it. I'll go in the morning to quit my job, and then I'll come see you. John took a sip of the cocktail they brought him. Everyone laughed. John shook his head, looking at Dinah. That's fine. I never doubted you. All right, I'll wait for you so I can bring you up to speed when you get here. They won't make you work for 2 weeks. Why don't you stay with us for a while? No, you should go. Sarah's probably worried about you. No, I'll make sure they don't. All right, Michael, I've got to go. It was good to see you. She's fine. She's probably asleep by now. I'm just going to sit here for a while. I've forgotten what it's like. Home, work, no fun. After Michael said that, John didn't want to go. John stared at his friend for a moment, not sure what he meant. You don't know, John. I'd give anything to have a home and a job like yours. Michael said thoughtfully. He saw her eyes light up at that. Don't mind me. I was just saying that. I guess it's time for me to get married too. Are you going to marry me, Uncle? Michael looked at Dinah. And what are your goals, Bunny? Dinah said in a thin voice. No, he laughed. I'm not ready to get married yet. I have other goals. John got up after Michael, and they went out together to accumulate capital. And how many times have I told you not to call me that? Well, I'm going to freshen up a bit. And your wife is a goddess. And this is just a cheap knockoff. It's a pity it's not written on women what they are. You'd waste so much time figuring it out. Thankfully, there are so many of these girls, so you don't even have to deal with them. Where did you find such a lady? John couldn't take it anymore. She's a goddess. You're wrong. You can forgive a lot of things in a woman like that. They're so easy to understand. Dinah's the same. All she has on her mind is clothes and nothing else. But she's so pretty. They went out together and sat down at the table again. Danny was gone. He must have gone somewhere. John didn't know him very well. Sometimes he saw him with Michael, but he wasn't close to him. I suppose you know better, but I can't stay with them long. I get bored with them quickly. He shrugged and sat down next to Dinah. Where's Danny? He asked Michael. John felt uncomfortable. He really liked Dinah, and he wished he could be in Michael's place. But alas, seeing that he had better go home, John did get up, said goodbye, and went out for a breath of cold air. He noticed that the rain had finally stopped. Did he say where he went? Danny got a phone call. He grabbed the phone and went out. I don't know anything else, Dinah said, pouting her lips and snuggling up to Michael. He parked the car, got out, and looked up at the windows of the apartment where they lived. Sarah was still awake. The light was on in her room. Sighing, he headed home. Opening the door, he immediately heard Sarah's voice. He got in his car and drove home. Dinah's face was in front of his eyes the whole time. It was like an obsession. Indecent scenes flashed through his mind. He was a man after all, and with a sick wife, things were not right. He was just doing his marital duty, but he wasn't enjoying it. Sarah would comfort him, saying that she was having a great time, but he could see that she was in pain. After that, he tried to approach her with it as little as possible, but only if he couldn't bear it at all. Yeah, it's me. What are you doing up? It's late. John. Sure, I'll just wash my hands. I was expecting you. I thought you'd be here as usual. And Emily left early today. She had some problems. I couldn't lie down properly. Everything hurts. Why don't you help me move the pillows? Perhaps he should send her to her mother, but it's not possible, and it's inconvenient. She wanted to take her daughter with her, but he wouldn't let her. And after what happened, Sarah's mother's health has become very bad, and most likely she won't be able to take care of her. So he'll have to look after her himself. But he couldn't do that for much longer. His patience was running out. He washed his hands and wondered how much longer this was going to go on. He didn't have the strength anymore. He didn't want to go to Sarah's either. He was tired of looking at her suffering, and at the same time at that brave look of hers, and reading in her eyes that everything was fine. Nothing's good, it's never been good, and it never will be. And he doesn't want to live like that anymore. Do you need any pills to take? Walking into Sarah's room, he removed the pillows and helped her lie down. She breathed a sigh of relief, writhing in pain. He turned away. This was something he couldn't look at anymore. Okay. Give me some painkillers because my back is really hurting. I'm tired today and I have a lot of work to do, so I'm going to go to bed now. Good night. He poured water into a glass, took a couple of pills, and helped her drink them. John didn't say anything. He silently turned off the light and closed the door behind him. Sarah lay in the dark, thinking about her husband. He hadn't even kissed her when he came home from work. Poor little guy. Must be tired a lot. Besides, he's coming back later and later every day, and he probably doesn't have enough time to rest, she thought. Honey, I'm sorry. I know you're working so hard because of me. But I know we're going to be okay. You'll be patient, I promise you. They were both very fond of reading, though. Emily would bring her her own books and borrow from Sarah's library. After she and John had lived together, they had brought her books from home, which her father had still collected. John still laughed at her. Then why does she need so much waste paper? Because he himself did not like to read and had no interest in books. But that was okay. The doctor would come tomorrow and tell her what she needed to do next, because she wasn't going to give up. She had been told then that the chances were slim, but even that was enough for her. It's not much, but it's there. And a nurse. She was lucky. Emily was a doctor, a specialist. True, she no longer worked in the hospital, but as a nurse. She took a lot of money, of course, but it was worth it. She knew her job very well. She didn't like to talk about herself. Sarah tried to ask her about her family, whether she had children, but she didn't say anything and quickly turned the conversation to another topic. Sarah realized that most likely the person did not want to tell and did not ask again. Found something to worry about. John laughed at the bottom then. We have enough problems in our lives and you worry about fictional characters. The fact that a book is just fine. It relaxes you. I sometimes, when I start reading, even forget where I am, and diving into an adventure or investigating a murder or worrying about a heroine who is heartbroken. But now she had plenty of time and could read every day. But when she started doing special exercises with Emily, she didn't have enough energy for books. But that didn't bother her because she was eager to get some results. She could see that John was getting tired, that he was losing hope, and that she would have to prove to him that they would be fine, that they would be happy. She just needed to be patient, and they would overcome this misfortune together. Sarah tried to explain to him that it was all different for her. But John didn't want to listen to her because he didn't understand her interest. She stopped telling him about it then and only read it when he wasn't home or in her spare time. When John watched soccer on TV, she lamented that she had very little time to read now. Family life demanded a different attitude, after all. Then, when it happened to her, he wanted to tear his friend apart. But again, Sarah wouldn't let him, and he'd bitch and not say anything to him, realizing that it was very hard on him too. Michael looked at Sarah's face and thought about the fact that he would do anything for her, just to have her by his side. After the club, Michael and Dinah arrived at his house. She went to the bathroom and he lay down on the couch and picked up his phone. He opened a folder of photos and leafed through, a few stopping on one. It showed a smiling Sarah, the one he still loved and had no way of forgetting. After she'd chosen John, he'd gone into the shadows, hadn't gotten in the way of their happiness. Dinah came out of the bathroom and sat down next to Michael. He was seeing less of John, and he didn't go to their house only because he felt so bad after seeing Sarah that he wanted to cry wolf. But John was his friend, and seeing how hard he was working for his wife, he decided to help him, even though he didn't need an employee. But what wouldn't you do for an old friend? He didn't like the way John was looking at Dinah today, though. He wasn't jealous, just uncomfortable with the fact that John had a beautiful woman waiting for him at home, and he was looking at other women and casting carnivorous glances at her. No, it's none of your business. Michael turned off his cell phone and mumbled, "Dinah, you're not my girlfriend. We're just having a good time together. If you meet another guy, I won't mind. You can go out with him. I understand you want to get married, but I'm sorry, it's not for me." "Michael, I don't like it when you talk to me like that," Dinah objected. "Why is it none of my business? I'm your girlfriend, and I don't like it when you look at other women." "Yes, I love her very much." "Do you love that girl in the picture?" "Don't you think there are too many questions on a subject that doesn't concern you at all?" "Then why are you with me and not her?" "I get it. She chose the other guy." "And you still can't get over it?" Dinah remained silent. She looked carefully at Michael, who had gone to the window and was staring out into the darkness. "You're just crazy. You gotta move on. Get married, have kids. You're living in the past and you're torturing not only yourself but the people around you. Because she's mine. She's my destiny. She didn't realize it then, but I did. But you can't force your way out. So I backed off, but now I feel like I'm gonna get what I want. And we're gonna be together." "You're not as stupid as I thought at first," he said. Michael turned and approached Dinah. "Don't worry, I never hurt a woman, but I'm going to need your help, and I'll pay you well for it. Will you help me?" Dinah recoiled, startled by his hard and cold gaze. "Yes, I am ready to help you," Dinah replied, "but only on condition that you do exactly as I say. And if you tell anyone about our conversation, I'll punish you. You know me so well, I'm very good at that. You've decided to get your hands on that girl after all, haven't you? She's not a thing, for one. And secondly, I already said it's none of your business. I'm just asking if you're willing to help me. I want a simple yes or no answer from you." Michael looked at Dinah carefully again, sat down next to her and began to tell her. "Dinah, I told you I'd help you. Tell me what I have to do." Oh, and then he needed to change before he met with Michael. He'd seen what his friend looked like yesterday. He looked like he'd just stepped off the cover of a magazine. John had always envied him because Michael was a good-looking guy, unlike himself. And he was surprised when Sarah chose him over Michael. It flattered him, and at the time he was just happy with the way things had turned out. But now he was ready to trade with anyone, as long as he didn't have to live this life with his sick wife. John had quit his job without any trouble, and he was a little hurt that he hadn't been persuaded to stay. He'd been fired without any problems. He walked out of the office holding a box of his belongings. He quickly loaded everything into the trunk and drove home. He wanted to leave it all behind, not carry it with him. Was something wrong? As he entered the apartment, he heard voices. Surprised, John looked into his wife's room and saw a nurse and a doctor. "All right then." "No, dear, just a routine checkup. Everything's fine. You'll have to forgive him. He didn't even say hello to anyone," the nurse said to the doctor. "It's just that he works a lot, and he's very tired. I'm surprised he came so early. Something must have happened." John left the room and made his way to the bathroom to wash his face. "That's right, Emily, we are making some progress, but it's too early to tell. Keep doing the same exercises. And then I've prescribed some medications for you. You should already be taking them. Make sure you tell your husband to get them for you." "Don't worry, Sarah, I know it's hard on all of you. But I think you're making progress," Emily said. "You probably shouldn't ask him to do that," Emily said, and picked up the prescription. "I'll ask him for the money and go to the pharmacy myself." "Okay, I'll be sure to tell him." "Well, now that we've decided I can go," said the doctor. "I'll come back in a week and see how things are going." "Thank you." A little later, John came in to see her. He poked his wife in the forehead and then said, "Emily went to see the doctor off." And Sarah smiled. Finally, some results. Too bad she couldn't say anything to John yet. But it wouldn't take much longer to make him happy. "Don't say that, John. You'll see. I'll be fine." Emily went to get her medicine. "I really don't understand why they're putting you on all this stuff, because it's obvious it's not doing any good." Sarah was silent. Tears came to her eyes, but she pulled herself together, smiled, and asked, "It's all about believing." "Believe in what? That you'll get up and run? It's not going to happen. The doctors made it very clear to us that you won't walk, you won't even be able to stand up. So why get your hopes up? And you probably want me not to come home at all. Do you want me to work day and night so that you buy yourself unnecessary drugs? Why are you up so early today? Nothing happened? I told you I'm fine. Besides, even if something is wrong, is there anything you can do to help me? John, why are you mad at me? I was just asking. Besides, I'm worried about what's wrong with you." "Well, don't be mad at me. I'm just worried. In fact, I'm glad you're back so early." "I wish." Sarah didn't say anything. She didn't know what to say. John had been kind of cold lately as it was, but today he wasn't like himself. He walked out, slamming the door. One tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. She wiped it away and told herself that she wouldn't cry, that everything would work out. Everyone's just nervous. It's hard for everyone right now, but they'll be fine soon. Just a little more and things will get better. I don't care what you'd like, and I have to go to work to support you. And your medication, if you must know, costs a lot of money. For some reason, he didn't want to go to work with a coworker in jeans and a sweater, so he took it out on Sarah. And for some reason, he didn't want to tell her that he was going to work with Michael now. He didn't know why he hadn't told her. But he didn't like the way Sarah talked about Michael, always with a kind of warmth in her voice. He'd been jealous before, but now he was just angry. John drove to Michael's house and thought about the fact that he was wrong to yell at Sarah. His nerves were just getting the best of him. He didn't mean it, but for some reason he couldn't help himself. The words just kept coming out. It was especially infuriating when that nurse came up to him, shoved a prescription up his nose, and told him the amount. And it wasn't a small amount, by the way. You got to earn that money. I had to give it to him. But of course his mood was ruined, because he expected to buy himself a new shirt. But it didn't work out. He had to change into his old suit. "Dear John, I'm glad you're here today. My deputy Victor will show and tell you everything. I think you will quickly understand the meaning of your work and get involved in the process. We have a lot of orders. That's how I see a tyrant. I was actually counting on you to come tomorrow." Michael greeted him with those words. "No, I'm sorry, but I don't have any time. I've got 3 meetings scheduled today and I've got a lot of work to do. But don't worry, I think I'll be free by evening and we'll go to a restaurant and have dinner. Celebrate your new job. You okay with that? I understand you're not in much of a hurry to get home." "I thought you were going to bring me up to speed," John said. "Well, you know best." "Okay, I'm going to go, but you better get up to speed. Time is money." "Not really," John sighed and looked at Michael. "Besides, Sarah's not alone. She has a nurse with her all the time, so it's all right." The day passed very quickly. John realized it only when he looked out the window. It was already dark. He looked at his watch and thought that Michael probably wouldn't make it to dinner. He sighed and started to get ready to go home. John looked at Michael with envy. He'd always wanted to be like him, as determined, serious, smart, but he'd never been able to do it. Maybe now that he would be working with him, he could learn from him. "I thought you were on your way home, but I see that you're here, and I'm glad that we'll have dinner together." It's been a while since we've talked. I've had a lot on my mind. Come on, let's go. I'm starving. But then a cheerful Michael entered the office. She has a nurse, plus she needs her rest. So I can go and have dinner in peace. I thought it wouldn't work out. I'm on my way home, John said. Well, if you must, Sarah must be worried and miss her husband. You're at work all day. But if I were you, I'd what? Well, whatever you say. They got into their cars and drove toward the restaurant. But John didn't know where they were going yet. Then, when they stopped at the luxurious building and got out of the cars, Michael explained that it was a new restaurant, and he had been here a couple of times before. Nothing. Okay, let's go. Michael, I'm sorry, but I don't think I have enough money. I can only imagine how much this place costs. The food here is amazing. I think you're going to love it. Yeah, I gave what I had left today to my wife for her medicine. You have no idea how much they cost. Plus, I feel like they're all useless. Don't worry, I invited you, I'm paying for it. By the way, are you really short on cash? I realized a long time ago that it wasn't going to work. The doctor said it was a long shot, but it's still a long shot. Is there anything else Sarah's hoping for? No, there's no chance. She's like a vegetable. She can barely move. And the doctor just said that so she wouldn't be upset. I don't understand why they're prescribing her these drugs. They're not helping. But what do you think, Sarah? They only happen in fairy tales. But in real life, take my word for it, they don't. Well, the doctors know best. In fact, I don't think you want your wife to get back on her feet. Why don't you go out there and support her? I mean, miracles do happen. And I don't want to get her hopes up, because that's not going to do any good. But Sarah's a fighter. I know her well. She'll do anything to get back up, and she needs your support more than ever, Michael argued. Just because it's not affordable for us, and they won't cure her there. I know that for a fact, John said. Have you looked into it? Maybe there are clinics abroad where she can get back on her feet? John was the first to ask a question. Michael shook his head, but said nothing more. The waiter came to them just at that moment, and they began to order. When the food was brought and they had eaten a little more, they began to talk again. She's a friend of mine. She and I have an open relationship. She knows it very well and has nothing against it. Why are you dining alone tonight, without Dinah? Michael, I don't think you understand. After that accident, I'm pretty much without a wife. I got an invalid living at home, that's all. I'm a man. I want to move on with my life, not sit around and comfort her. Are you serious? I wouldn't let a woman like that get away from me. You have a beautiful wife at home. Why do you have to go out with her, buddy? How did you understand all that today? Do you know what you're going to do now? Do you have any questions? Michael wanted to remind her whose fault it was that all this had happened. But he didn't say anything because he didn't think it was the right time to tell him. Maybe things weren't so bad for them, and he would meddle in the family, bring discord. Apparently, John was just tired, so he said those words. So Michael decided to steer the conversation in another direction. I worked hard, and I explained to you that I had a plan, and if I stuck to it, it would work out. And it did. No, I got it all figured out. Hey, how'd you get so big so fast? I mean, I thought it was going to take years. What are you talking about, John? Do you hear yourself? And me, Michael, I was good at first, too. But you remember how happy we were. And then the accident, and everything went to hell. There's nothing you can do about it. I feel like I'm in prison. I don't want to go home. I don't want to do anything. I'm tired. I guess I want to run away somewhere far away so that no one will ever find me. But I have to live and hope for something. But I don't hope for anything anymore. I've been meaning to ask you something. Do you know if there are any special hospitals where they can put disabled people like my wife? You'll earn more money, find a good clinic, send your wife there for treatment, and they'll put her back on her feet. You don't understand me. It's just a question. I think maybe she'd be better off there. I mean, she's alone most of the day. I can't be with her because I have to work, and she's waiting for me, worrying all the time. I'm always in a hurry, and life just passes me by, and we're so young. I'm tired, Michael. I just can't take it anymore. Are you talking about your wife? Do you realize how much money that is? And if they don't, I've just thrown it away. It's just something you've never dealt with. I have, and I know that it's only in the movies that people with this diagnosis get back on their feet. It's not like that in real life. She's just going to lay there for the rest of her life. And when I think about it, I don't want to live, because it's a misery, not a life. So what if it's a waste? You'll know you did everything you could to help her. If I were you. Michael stopped talking at that point again. I'm talking about me. Because I don't even have a wife. I don't even know who she is. I've got to get on with my life. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're talking about you or Sarah. Yeah, you surprised me. But that's your opinion. And I know it's hard for you, but you don't think about the fact that Sarah's having a harder time than you are. And Michael didn't know what to say to that. John was not the same guy he'd thought he was then, kind, helpful. Or had he never been? John, okay, we'll figure something out. It'll be easier for you to work now. You won't have to work so much, and you'll make more money. You're probably just tired. That's what's gotten into you. What does that have to do with me? I'm not lying in bed like a vegetable. My body's fine, and I'm not going to bury myself with her. But you're not doing anything to make it change, Michael said. It got to me a long time ago when I realized nothing was going to change. You're wrong, John. I'm willing to fight to the end for the woman I love. And if there's one chance in 1,000 that she could get better, I'd take it. What would you do if you were me? Trust me, the same nothing. Well, it's time to go home. Your wife's waiting for you at home. And as long as she's holding on, like you say, you should be there for her. You're a grown man and you don't realize there's no chance at all. She'll never get up again. She's just holding on now because it's been a while. And then she'll realize it's useless. And that's what I'm most afraid of. I don't even want to think about what's going to happen next. Michael was in a lot of pain. He did not expect to hear a revelation from his closest friend, and, as it turned out, a weak man who was ready to leave his wife just because he was tired. And he tried not to think about Sarah, realizing what she was going through. How does she feel when she sees her husband who doesn't support her and doesn't want her? He gritted his teeth, wanting so badly to shake John and tell him he didn't want to see him, to go to their house, to grab Sarah and hold her against him, and whisper in her ear that he would get her out, that he would help her, that he would help her, that he would do anything to make her happy. But she had fallen in love with someone else, and no matter what he did, she would still consider him her friend, but unloved. I don't want to be. I can't see her anymore. You should see her. She looks the same as before, and yet I can't see her anymore. He felt guilty because he hadn't come to visit her lately. He couldn't. He knew that if he saw her, he wouldn't be able to leave, wouldn't be able to get away from her, because his heart already ached for her. And knowing how the man she loved felt about her, he couldn't leave her with John. After saying goodbye, they drove off in different directions. Michael drove home, realizing that Sarah needed help, that with a husband like John, she would simply die. And what should he do? He could only wait for his beloved to realize that John was not her destiny, that she was a little mistaken when she chose him. Apparently she was scared. He realized that, but he didn't interfere, seeing that if he interfered, he would lose Sarah as a friend. Once again, Sarah didn't wait for her husband. She fell asleep after taking a painkiller, and this time a sleeping pill as well. She had overdone it today. Emily scolded her for it, because it was absolutely wrong to do that. Sarah realized that herself, but she couldn't stop because she felt like she could do more exercise, when she didn't need to. By evening she was aching so badly that she lay quietly and moaned, but it was the nurse who heard her. John also drove leisurely through the city, listening to music with pleasure. He had a delicious dinner and everything would have been fine if he didn't have to drive home. That dampened his mood a bit, and he decided to drive around town a bit to wait for his wife to finally fall asleep. Otherwise, this will not be good for you, but bad for you. Do you understand me? Sarah, I warned you that you should listen to me and not do anything amateurish. But now that you haven't listened to me, we need to let you rest for a few days. You're wrong, Sarah. A man in love sees everything, even the smallest things, and I think he'll be happy for you. Besides, he'll tell you to take care of yourself. I'm sorry, I really overdid it today. I felt like I could. And this is the result. Forgive me again, you're not angry. I'm just so excited to tell my husband about my progress. I can see how hard it is for him. He's losing hope, and that's the worst part. I need to tell him. But I can't yet. He won't understand. It won't mean anything to him. John had been working on Michael's farm for a week now. His friend was right. There wasn't a lot of work, but when he saw how much he was going to get, he was pleasantly surprised. No, John won't. I need to work out more before he realizes I can finally get back on my feet. He was just getting up from the table when the door opened and Dinah appeared on the doorstep. That afternoon, arriving at work at 8 o'clock, John went into his office, turned on his computer and delved into his calculations. The day stretched slowly, and he looked at his watch and decided to go to lunch. Besides, he hadn't even had coffee since this morning because Sarah was still asleep and he didn't want her to see him when she woke up. Lately, he had been trying to have as little contact with her as possible. More often than not, he came home when she was already asleep, and he was fine with that. No, I haven't seen him today. Why? Did something happen to you? Hi, do you know where Michael is? Listen, I'm going out to lunch right now. Would you care to join me? Yes, I have. I want to tell him we're breaking up. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't care. I was never anything to him. He's just been seeing me to kill time. I don't like that. I want a serious relationship. Are you right? That's not going to work. Let's go to a restaurant. Have a drink. I don't have any more work to do today. I'll do it tomorrow. It's just that I can see that you're in a bad way, and I can keep you company so you're not alone. No, I'm not hungry. I could use a drink right now. All right, let's go. Only you probably won't be able to sing. They say you've got a wife at home. You're lucky you've got someone waiting for you. I'm always alone. I thought I could do something with Michael. But I was wrong. He doesn't feel anything for me. He's a good man, though. He never hid it. He always told me the truth. Well, if you offer and you're not afraid of a scandal waiting for you at home, then let's go. Dinah looked at John carefully, then said, I see. And I thought I had a chance, because frankly, my wife is not an obstacle for me. But if she's sick, I won't even flirt with you. I'm not afraid of anything, and there won't be a scandal. My wife is sick and terminally ill. In the restaurant, they ordered 300 grams of cognac and, having drunk a couple of shots, began to talk. After saying that, John felt uncomfortable. He wanted her to flirt with him, he wanted to hug her, and in general, he wanted a lot of things. But he pulled himself together, and they left the office together. There's nothing wrong with you. It's them assholes who don't get it. And Michael's just like them. Look, I'm a beautiful girl, but I have no luck in my personal life. I'm dating a guy. He says he loves me. And then he marries someone else. Tell me what's wrong with me. He told me at once that he had no love for me, and that I shouldn't count on anything. I just hoped I could melt his heart, but I couldn't. And he did a good job of not lying to me. Plus, he's very generous. Although he treated me like that, but still, he did not forget to do me nice things, as well as expensive gifts. I know this is all wrong. You'll say he was just paying me, but I'm grateful for a lot of things. And I have no hard feelings toward him. No, don't touch Michael, said Dinah. He and I are fair. You're right, Michael is like that. He's always there for me, and he's always there for me. What happened with your wife? It's interesting, Michael's always been like that. I guess we became friends because we're so much alike. I value his friendship and I cherish it. And I'm in a difficult situation right now, and he's been there for me. I'm very grateful to him for that. Actually, John did not want to tell about his wife, but apparently the cognac was doing its job, and he could not stop. Why, didn't Michael tell you anything? I see. Yes, my wife is paralyzed, and there is no chance she will ever get up. We realized that a long time ago and decided she was on her own. I'm on my own. She doesn't want to ruin my life, realizing that I'm young and that I still have a long way to go. And she, as a wife, will not be able to give me much. So I'll probably divorce her. No, he never said anything about his friends or his work. When I met him, he just relaxed and avoided such topics. She was driving, she lost control. And now she's bedridden for life. She's an interesting woman. And to be honest, in such situations, women behave differently, trying to keep her husband, realizing that then she will be all alone. How did this happen? Why was she in that situation? I've done everything I can, but it's no use. I worked like an ox, taking her to different hospitals. When I realized there was nothing I could do, I thought I'd go crazy. But then we got over it. Both of us have. This is why I don't like driving. And Michael offered to buy me a car, but I turned him down. I'd rather take a cab, but I can't drive myself. I'm too scared. I know it's really hard for you right now. Especially when you see the woman you love so helpless. You want to do something to help her, but you don't know how. There's nothing to tell. I got a job after college. Everything seemed fine until the boss started harassing me. I had to quit. Now I'm a freelancer. I've got some savings, and Michael's helping me out. But I realize I need to do something else. But I haven't decided what yet. I actually want to get married. Go out, wait for my husband from work. Cook him delicious breakfasts, lunches and dinners, and then give him a passionate night. What's so supernatural about my dreams? But I don't even have that. I see. I'm sorry you had to go through that. But the important thing is to keep your spirits up. Life is beautiful. It just sends us trials that we have to go through. Dinah, tell me more about yourself. I'd love to hear from you. What kind of girl? You think if I look like a doll, I don't have a soul? Well, I have the simplest of desires and nothing special about them. I didn't think a girl like you was like that. But what to do? What could he do to keep them together? All sorts of thoughts popped into his head. But how to make it right for him, he didn't know yet. John was happy with Dinah, and he could see that she was happy with him. And he longed to have her with him always, not just for one night, but always. Did something happen to you? You weren't in the office at 12 last night. Something with Sarah? The next day, Michael called him into his office. Michael listened intently to John. And the more he listened, the more he didn't like the situation. What does Sarah have to do with anything? Michael, come on. She's fine. And in her case, nothing's going to change. This is different. I was at a restaurant with Dinah last night. Your girlfriend is hot. I can't take my eyes off her. I must be out of my mind. But you gotta understand, I can't live with a log anymore. I have neither strength nor patience. I don't know yet. Live, I guess. Okay, I have a headache today. I think I'm gonna go home, if that's okay with you. I'm probably just tired. I haven't had a vacation in a long time. So let me take a little vacation today. What are you going to do? Where else would I go? You're going home? John had gone pale. He hadn't made up his mind yet, and Michael had already read it on his face. He had to be very careful so that no one would suspect anything. Okay, go ahead. Just don't do anything stupid. I don't like the look on your face. It's the look people get when they want to commit a crime. So it's got to be something else. He'll say he wants to take her to her mom's, that he's having financial difficulties for now and can't pay. Right? That's what he'll do. And then? Well, what then, he didn't want to think about yet. He had a plan already in place. In fact, no one sees his wife except Emily. But he'd fire her today, say he'd found a nurse more experienced than her. No, that's not going to work. She could just come in to visit, because she and Sarah have become very close lately. John drove home, convincing himself that whatever he did now would be the right thing to do. He should take Sarah far away and leave her there. Better in the woods, but it was a long drive there. All right then, he can see where to dump her on the way. When he went outside, he saw that it was finally snowing. The first snowflakes were quietly falling on the ground, and soon they would cover the whole earth with their white fluffy blanket. He'll think of something. He just has to make sure she's never found. Like they say, no body, no case. When he's finally going to enjoy himself and make her feel good about herself. You can't live like this. It's not just her suffering, it's the suffering of those around her. But then what do we tell anyone who asks about her? That mom has it now. He'll think of something. The main thing now was just to get rid of her. He couldn't bear to see her in his house every day. John noticed his hands trembling as he drove up to the house, but he decided that he wouldn't pay attention to such trifles. And if he didn't do what he had planned today, he just wouldn't have the guts to do it later. And then he wouldn't do it ever again. When he got home, he immediately made his way to his wife's room. Sarah was breathing very frequently. There was a blush on her cheeks, as if she had been running cross-country. "What's going on here?" he asked angrily and looked at Emily, who was pouring water into a glass for Sarah. "It's just calisthenics, and we've been practicing for a while," Emily said and handed the glass to Sarah. She began to drink, looking at John with shining eyes. He looked away and said, "Emily, I need to talk to you." They walked out and he got right down to business. He held out an envelope to Emily with the words, "As of today, you no longer work here." "But why? Are you having trouble with money right now?" Emily wondered. "That's why I won't be able to pay you for the time being. I'm asking you to find somewhere else." "What about Sarah? Who will look after her now?" "Sarah will move in with her mother. It's a necessary and hopefully temporary measure. As soon as things get better, I'll bring her back. And if you have any problems with your job by then, which I doubt because you're a good professional, you'll be able to work for us again." "Where does her mom live? Maybe I could visit Sarah." "I don't think so. Her mom lives in the middle of nowhere. It's a long drive. But don't worry. There are plenty of women out there who'd be happy to look after her. I'll find someone to take good care of her. Besides, her mother doesn't work, so she'll be with her daughter all the time." Emily nodded, took the envelope, and began to pack. "You're probably right." "All right, well, I'll be on my way. Tell Sarah you don't have to tell her anything. When you bring her back again, please call me right away, please." "No, Sarah will be upset. I haven't told her about our temporary difficulties yet. I'll tell her it won't be for long, then she won't be so upset. And if you start saying goodbye, it'll just make it worse. I'd like to say goodbye to Sarah. Is that okay?" I heard the door slam. "Was that Emily leaving?" Sarah asked. When Emily left, John stood in the hallway for a moment, then took a deep breath and went into his wife's room. Sarah was already breathing evenly, but it was obvious she was a little tired. "I will. We'll go in my car. I'll put you gently in the back seat, make a soft bed, and you'll be comfortable. Besides, it's been so long since you've been outside. I guess you'd like to see what's going on out there." "You ask me, John. How are we going to get there?" "Yes, I let her go. Let her get some rest. She needs rest too. In fact, I have a surprise for you. I took a vacation and I want to go with you to see your mother." "You want to see your mother?" "But John, isn't it too late? It's dangerous to ride at night in this weather. It'll be dark in a little while. I need to get some sleep. I'm tired. Then we'll pack up and get on the road right away." "You bet I do." Emily said, "It's snowing. And you know how much I love looking at snow. I'm in." "When do we leave?" Besides, Sarah had told him that her mother was very sick now, and her neighbor was always with her. Something wasn't right. Without thinking, Emily picked up the phone and dialed a number she knew by heart, and that wasn't in her phone book. She was answered immediately. She said a couple of sentences, looked at her watch, and indicated that she would be right over. Then she got up and walked to the bus stop. She felt uneasy, but she thought she had done the right thing by calling this man. He would definitely figure it all out and wouldn't let Sarah get hurt. Emily walked out of the house, walked a little way, and sat down on a bench. Somehow she couldn't believe that John had decided to take his wife to her mother. He hadn't really cared about Sarah lately. Emily could see that she was worried, but she didn't show it. "That's all right. I'll be very careful. Besides, you should get some sleep too. I can already see your eyes closing. Get some rest. And then when I get everything ready, we'll get on the road right away." Listening, Sarah heard someone walking around the apartment. The footsteps were inaudible and quiet, as if the person didn't want to be heard. Sarah's mood lifted. She closed her eyes and began to think how happy her mom would be when she saw her. Sarah missed her very much, but she didn't say anything to her husband. She realized that it was hard enough for him. Sarah opened her eyes. The room was dark, the clock ticking quietly, lulling her to sleep again. She couldn't figure out what time it was or where John was. The house was quiet, and she thought that her husband was probably still sound asleep. He must be tired. Well, let him sleep. They would go tomorrow then. It's no big deal. At least he would be rested and in a good mood that she would soon meet her mother. Sarah nodded. The fear was gone, and she looked at John with eyes full of love. Now her husband was in a good mood. And on the road, when they drove, she would tell him that she was making progress, and that if she kept it up, she would soon be able to sit up on her own. And then she would stand up. She knew that would make John happy, give him hope again, and they would be fine. "Why are you yelling?" "Of course it's me. I just thought you were still asleep and I didn't want to wake you. I packed a few things, made us some sandwiches for the road. And since you're already awake, I'll get you dressed and take you out to the car." "John, is that you?" "John. No, we're not waiting for morning. Besides, I'm well rested and I can drive. And there's no traffic. We can get out of the city without any problems." "John, I don't think we should go at this time. Let's wait until morning." As he turned on the light in the room, Sarah glanced at the clock and looked at her husband in surprise. It was almost 2 now. Sarah lay in the car, not realizing what was going on. She had a feeling they weren't going to her mother's house because the bags were nowhere to be found, though maybe he had already carried them to the car. Perhaps she calmed down a little and heard John coming. He got behind the wheel and they started up. John was silently doing his job and didn't even look at his wife. Then he took her in his arms and carried her to the car. He put her gently on the blanket, slammed the door, and went somewhere, apparently to see if they'd gotten everything, because he was gone for a couple minutes. Sarah didn't know what to say. "Well, if that's the way he wants it, we can go." As he dressed his wife, she noticed that his hands were shaking. She looked at him and wanted to ask him how he was feeling. But the words stuck in her throat. She realized something was wrong. Thoughts began to jumble in her head. She didn't understand what was going on. She said nothing to this and decided to talk to her husband a little, to cheer him up. But it didn't work. He didn't answer her questions and tried not to pay any attention to Sarah at all. "Sarah, just bear with me. I don't want to stop now. I'll get you some water later." "John, could you get me some water? I'm really thirsty." She wanted to scream but couldn't. She wanted to pull herself up, but she couldn't either. Besides, it was very cold to lie in the snow, and she realized that she would soon freeze. As if in a fog, she saw that she was in a dump. Piles of garbage were towering on all sides. Clearly, no one would find her here, and they probably wouldn't be looking for her. After all, he'd probably told everyone he was taking her to her mother. And there's no way to contact her mother. Because in the middle of nowhere, where her mother lives, they don't know what cell phones are, no matter how many times they tried to get the internet there. But it didn't work out. But the door swung open on her side. John grabbed Sarah and pulled her out of the car. She stared at him, uncomprehending, and he laid her down on the bare ground. Then he took a blanket out of the car, threw it to her, and without saying anything, got in, turned the car around, and drove off. Sarah stared after the car and couldn't believe what was happening to her. They had been traveling for about an hour when Sarah felt tired and fell asleep. She woke up to the banging of the door. When she opened her eyes, she saw that her husband was gone. Apparently, he had decided to go out to stretch a little. It was hard to drive for so long after all. But now, what's the point? She'd been thrown out, which meant there was nothing left to live for. She began to freeze, her teeth chattering from the cold, and she stiffened, pulling the blanket with her hands to keep warm. It didn't help much. But as it seemed to her, she began to warm up little by little. She felt sleepy, though, and closed her eyes tiredly. For some reason, Sarah remembered the time when the three of them had been friends, Dinah, Michael, and John. She remembered the moment when Michael had realized that she favored John. He had told her he wouldn't get in the way. But Sarah had to be careful because John was capable of betrayal. At the time, Sarah had thought that Michael had said that out of spite because she hadn't chosen him. But now, remembering those words, she realized that Michael had told her the truth. I guess he'd already seen what John was capable of. A tear rolled down her cheek and Sarah raised her eyes to the sky. She prayed. Then she looked around again, and it was clear to her that she was probably going to stay here. It was a shame her life had ended like this. She wanted to live. She wanted so much to love, to have children, to have a big and friendly family. And now she's going to have none of that. Her husband had just thrown her away like a piece of junk that was being thrown into a landfill. She felt helpless and needed by no one. She shouted. But there was no scream, only a hoarse whisper, and she realized she couldn't even call for help anymore. She closed her eyes as she suddenly felt herself being grabbed in her arms and heard Emily's voice nearby. She wanted to answer again. Then she opened her eyes and realized that she must have dozed off and was dreaming. But as she listened, she really heard her name, Sarah. Sarah, I'm here. She dreamed that she was walking through a meadow and was picking flowers to put in a vase. And ahead of her she saw a male figure coming toward her. But no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't recognize who it was. Because it was a man she didn't recognize. And then she heard that he was calling her, and he kept shouting her name, Sarah. Sarah, and she wanted to yell back, but she couldn't. John arrived home and went straight to bed. He was afraid he would dream about Sarah. But strangely enough, his rest was dreamless. When he got up in the afternoon, he walked through the rooms and realized that he had done everything right. Now he just needed to sell this apartment to erase all memories of his wife and move to another place. And he needs to do it as soon as possible. He's going to start his life over. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief and fell into the darkness. Well, thank God we made it. I was so afraid we wouldn't be able to find her. Well, I'd like to turn to a reliable person. What's the big deal? There are plenty of realtors now and a whole bunch of agencies too. Apply and you will immediately help. Digging through his address book, he dialed the number of a realtor he knew, but he didn't answer. John called him a little later, and when he finally picked up the phone, he said he was in another city and couldn't help. All right, I'll give you one number, said the realtor. Call me and tell me it's from me. Why you urgently decided to sell the apartment? Are you leaving or what? You know what time we live in, and I don't want to lose my apartment. John objected. After he got the number, he called and made an appointment, even so boldly. But the boss is the boss. So I'll send you the number. Call and they'll help you. We don't like it. We want to change our apartment and our life. Then I'll have a guy come to see you tomorrow. His name is Stan. He'll take a look at your apartment, the neighborhood you live in, and get it to me. We'll get the deal done as soon as possible, and you'll get your money. I hope you know our rates. You've been warned? Yes, as long as it's reliable. My name is Andrew. Only I want to warn you right away that I will not be the one to deal with you. My assistant will do that, but I hope it doesn't matter to you. Am I right? The next day, John called Michael to warn him that he had some urgent business to attend to and that he would be a little late, or maybe not even work today. But his phone was disconnected, so he called his deputy Paul and told him that he would probably be out today, and if he could get off early, he would definitely come to work. Great, then everything's fine. Yes, I was told, so I'll pay you as soon as you sell my apartment, and I get the money. Oh, I see. He hasn't said anything to me, though. He won't be in for a few days. Why can't I get in touch with Michael? Where is he? On a business trip. Sarah opened her eyes, not realizing where she was. She felt very warm. She looked around and realized she was in a hut. The walls were wooden. Lace curtains hung from the windows and bundles of dried herbs hung in the corners of the room. She inhaled the aroma. It smelled very good and unusual. And then she felt very hungry. John said nothing and immediately disconnected. Then he looked angrily at the phone he held in his hand. He and Paul disliked each other immediately. John thought he should be Michael's right-hand man. They were friends, after all. Paul apparently thought John had no business being there, so he hardly ever spoke to him. Do you think he should be reporting to you? How glad I am to see you. I'm so happy to see you. Sarah, my darling, at last. I've been so worried about you, Emily. Is there anyone here? She called out. Sarah was really hysterical. She couldn't calm down, crying until Emily brought her some potion and made her drink it. After that, Sarah began to calm down, and then she fell asleep. He threw me out. He just threw me out like a useless thing, like a dog that its master doesn't want. But if it weren't for you, I'd be dead, I'd be gone. But he's my husband. How could he do this to me? Emily, how could he do this to a living person? How could he? And then Sarah remembered. She looked at Emily in horror, then looked around again and cried. She walked to the kitchen and began to go further through the herbs she had pulled out of an old trunk. This was where her grandmother had once lived in Miami. After her death, Emily hadn't sold the house, and sometimes came here herself to get some rest and recuperation. Sometimes, seeing that this or that herb was running out, and she collected them herself, dried them, realizing that it could do some good. Many people these days don't believe in their healing properties. But Emily knew for a fact that they helped, and now she gave Sarah an infusion to calm her down and get some sleep. And then, when she woke up, she'd have to have a serious talk with her. And Emily already knew what she would tell her. Plus, he'd left her in a place where there were hardly any people, and no one would probably have found her. God, that's just awful. Something has to be done about John. He's just a danger to society. Looking at this girl, Emily didn't know what to do next. That after what she had been through, it would be very hard to get her back to normal. Most likely she would just shut herself in and not want anything more. I mean, everything she did was for her husband. She worked so hard for him. Her goal was to get back on her feet so they could have a proper family. And John did this to her. And if she hadn't suspected, if she hadn't followed him, then what would have happened? Sarah would have died. No, I work. I had to take today off to meet you. Well, that makes sense to me. You're home all the time, I take it? John was walking around the rooms with a young man who was writing something down in a notebook. You don't understand, a client can't wait. Besides, you're not alone. If you're not here, we'll go look at other options. You understand that? And from what I understand, it's in your interest to sell it as soon as possible. Well, you make an appointment for tonight when I'm sure I'll be home. Then we have a problem. I need you to be home, because I can bring a client to you at any time who wants to buy your apartment. All right, well, I'll give you another key. But I'm asking you very nicely. Well, we have to work, too. Besides, you're the one who said you wanted to sell the apartment as soon as possible. So what's the matter? Well, then what do we do? I can't stay home all day. I have to work, you understand. The guy said goodbye and left. John looked at his watch and decided that he wouldn't go out today. He would rest at home for a while and then ask Dinah out. Of course, he could ask her home, but for some reason he didn't want to do that. It seemed to him that Sarah's odor was still lingering in the place, and it was unpleasant. I see, of course. So here, take the keys. Keep me informed. I understand. But we've been in business a long time and we do everything for our clients. So don't worry, everything will be fine. As soon as they want to buy your apartment, we will contact you immediately. And then you'll have to come right away. Sarah opened her eyes and saw the wooden walls again. There was a warmth and a sense of peace coming from them. She sighed and called out to Emily. He went into the kitchen for a little refreshment. It felt light and good. For the first time in all this time, he tried not to think about Sarah, because he thought he had done the right thing. He picked up the phone and dialed Dinah's number. As he listened to the dial tone, he wondered where he could invite her so that she would like it. The ringing stopped and John dialed the number again. But there was still no answer. Then he decided to call a little later. Maybe Dinah would see that he had called her and call back herself. But Sarah, you can't do this. You'll ruin yourself. I don't need class. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. And I'm not going to eat. Are you awake yet? Why don't you eat? You need to eat something to give you strength. We have to keep going to class, and you've gotten weak. I know how you feel. I've been through it myself. After all, I was once in love too, and I thought I had married the man I loved then. I dreamed that we would have a beautiful family, children, and we would live happily ever after. But then I got sick. I was diagnosed with cancer. And then the difficulties began. Sarah thought Emily was going to leave, but she sat down next to Sarah, took her hand, and began to talk. So be it. I have nothing to live for anymore, so don't try. And you can throw me out too, so you don't have to deal with me anymore. You can't imagine what happened to me at that moment. I was alone, without a place to live, without anything, and I couldn't even go to the police because I had no proof. So I settled here. My grandmother was still alive at the time. She put me back on my feet and told me that life goes on, that she had sent me a trial and I had overcome it, so I could go on with my life just fine. I recovered, filed for divorce, and we split the apartment. My husband, of course, tried to get it all back, but I didn't want it. And then I heard him telling his girlfriend that he doesn't want to see me anymore, and that he doesn't know what to do, because the apartments are common, and if he decides to divorce me, then of course half of the apartment is mine by law. And then she advised to get rid of me. They started whispering, and I didn't understand what they were up to. But I didn't wait. I packed my things and left. At first, my husband braced himself, was by my side, supported me as much as he could. But he didn't last long. When I was at home after chemotherapy, he started to bring women into the house and make love to them. He didn't care that I could hear everything. He felt that if I wasn't living, I had no right to stop him from living. In some ways I agreed with him, but what I felt is beyond words. I understand you and I won't be cranky anymore. Bring everything you have, because I am very hungry, said Sarah. Sarah listened intently to Emily's story and cried. Sarah realized that she was right and that she should not give up. After hearing that, I wanted to stay as far away from that man as possible. So this is what I mean. If you once ran into a scoundrel, do not because of this ruin your life. You'll only do him good, prove by your behavior that he has allowed everything. You don't want people like that getting away with it. So please, pull yourself together, be stronger, and prove to your husband that you are a survivor and that you will be happy without him. I didn't call you in to see me. Did something happen to you? John went to work, and the first thing he did was go to Michael's office. He was there, and when he saw his friend, he was surprised. Emily smiled. Everything is behind her, and now Sarah will definitely get better. That girl is very strong in spirit. She didn't give up then, which means she won't give up now. John noticed that Michael wasn't talking to him the way he used to, but rather coldly and rudely. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. You've just been away for a few days. So I came by to ask how you were doing and see if anything was wrong. Michael, why? It's not going to change anything. We've already accepted that there's nothing we can do, so we don't need to show her to a doctor. I'm fine too. How's Sarah doing? I was just on a business trip and I was talking to this doctor, and he told me that Sarah's case is not hopeless and that we can try to cure her. How are you doing? Michael listened to John in silence and could barely contain himself from lashing out at him. John noticed it too and was a little taken aback, not realizing what had caused his friend's reaction. Michael, you're misunderstanding me. We've been to doctors, and they've all said it's useless. You don't understand. You think I don't want Sarah to get better, but I don't. On the contrary, I care about her. Can you imagine what would happen to her if she believed it again, and it was all for nothing? Why are you being so resistant? If you can't do it yourself, then let me take Sarah to see him. Thank you, Emily. But you don't have to call anyone. I'm just selling the apartment. Apparently the realtor brought in some clients. Don't worry about it. John looked at Michael and walked out the door. He didn't understand what was going on, why Michael was looking at him so strangely. But he was distracted from these thoughts by the bell. It was a neighbor calling. She said that there were some strangers in the apartment, and that she decided to call him first and then the police. What's wrong with you? Are you angry about something? I'm only looking out for Sarah. All right, well, if that's what you want, I'll ask her today. And if she says she's okay with it, I'll see the doctor myself. So you're happy? Now get on with your business, because I don't have time. He said goodbye to his neighbor and headed happily to his office. He waited for the call, realizing that he would probably get a call soon, because the apartment was big and nice, so they would buy it quickly. But time passed, and still no call came. John wanted to call himself, and then he was distracted. And when he remembered that he wanted to make the call, it was too late. So he decided to put it off until tomorrow. Emily, Sarah left us for now to stay with her mother. After we decided to sell the apartment, we realized it was better for her to stay there for a while. What's wrong with that? You should have warned me. Besides, Sarah's alone in there. Why would she have people in the house? Apparently, the neighbor heard the commotion at the door, because she immediately came out and said. Sighing, John drove toward the house to park his car. He went up to his apartment, got his key, but couldn't open his door. He was very surprised and thought that he had probably mixed up his keys and was trying to open the door with the key from his office. But no, the key was from his apartment. Only for some reason he didn't open the door. And now he'd better ask Dinah out on a date and then have dinner somewhere. Then they'd go somewhere and spend the evening together. But like yesterday, Dinah didn't answer him, and he realized that something was wrong. Before he left, he decided to stop by Michael's office to see where Dinah was and see if she had gone back to his friend. But he wasn't in his office, and Michael's car wasn't in the parking lot either. And the fact that you sold the apartment with your stuff. I didn't sell it at all. Nobody told me. And no one gave me the money for the apartment. How did you sell it? I didn't get any calls, and the papers showed me that the apartment was already in someone else's possession. I checked, and everything was in order. They changed the locks right away, and then they went somewhere else and haven't been back yet. I thought it was them. Then I looked through the peephole and I saw you. So who sold it? Why are you trying to get into someone else's apartment? I wish you'd found them and taken them. Maybe this wouldn't have happened. Are you going to run to the police? The neighbor asked. Yeah, they were in a desk drawer somewhere. I don't even know where I thought I'd find them. Then somehow I forgot. You know what I mean? I always come in late, so I didn't have time for them. So you gave them the keys. Did you leave all the deeds to the apartment at home? John didn't know what to do. It was like a fate. In a flash, he just lost his apartment. He started calling the realtor he gave the keys to. Then he started calling a friend, but all the numbers were disconnected. So he got in his car and drove to the police station. Oh, my dear, these crooks are capable of more than that now. They did it without you. Haven't you heard? It happens all the time. And here I thought you were a smart guy and wouldn't fall for it. I'm going to call the realtor and demand the keys and the money. In general, I'll tell him to come here right away, John replied. And anyway, how could they get the apartment without me? Sarah had been staying with Emily for a week. She was happy and relaxed. But at night she dreamed about John, and how he'd throw her out of the car and drive away. And she'd wake up crying. Emily would come running to her, give her some kind of potion, and Sarah would go back to sleep. He had already dialed his friend's number when he suddenly remembered about Sarah. Michael would not believe that he took her to her mother. That meant he couldn't know anything about what had happened. And after all, he was going to ask him for help, knowing that Michael had police connections. It's a good thing he remembered about Sarah. How would he explain the whole situation to Michael then? John broke out in a cold sweat after that. He started the car and drove to the hotel. John sat there for 3 hours while he wrote a statement, while he talked to the investigator. Anyway, when he got out of the station, it was very late. John got into the car and realized that he simply had nowhere to go. While the investigation was going on, he had to live somewhere. He didn't want to spend money on a hotel. So he decided to call Michael and ask him to fly down for a while. Sarah was curious who Emily was talking to, and she realized it was about her. But she wasn't expecting anyone, and probably no one remembered her anymore. After all, when she married John, she still had friends around. But then, when it happened to her, it had all gone away, and even Michael had stopped coming over. John said he had a girlfriend. Sarah felt uncomfortable hearing that, though she couldn't really explain why. She was married, she loved her husband, and she didn't care about Michael. You don't worry, she's fine. You're coming over, but on a business trip. All right then, we'll wait. I think she'll be happy to see you. Then you'll explain everything yourself. One morning after the next class, Sarah was lying on her bed reading a book when suddenly she heard Emily talking on the phone. Michael arrived at work and went straight to his office. In the hallway, he came face to face with John. He looked terrible, his hair was disheveled, his face was wrinkled, and it was obvious that something had happened to him. It's just someone I know. He'll be here soon, and then you can talk to him yourself. It's Andrew. Emily laughed, but didn't say anything. Emily, who were you talking to? Sarah shouted, because curiosity had gotten the better of her. Michael looked at John in surprise, then invited him into his office. Why do you keep asking about her? What could possibly be wrong with her? She's just lying there. She can't do anything else. Don't you want to ask what happened to me? Maybe I'm the one with the problem, not your Sarah. What's the matter with you? You don't look like yourself. Is it Sarah? Michael asked. I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. John opened his mouth, but then he realized that Michael would start asking questions, which would lead to a conversation about Sarah. And he didn't want that. Well, tell me what's wrong. As long as you say Sarah's okay, Michael said. You're not confusing things, are you? As far as I knew, Sarah loved this time of year, Michael said, surprised. No, I don't need it yet. Probably a little later. It's cold now. Sarah's not feeling well all the time. She must be moping. You know how she hates winter. I know what you mean. And I was thinking maybe you should take a vacation. I'd send you and Olia to the sea, abroad. Imagine, it's winter here, and you're swimming in the sea. Well, do you like such an offer? There's no time yet, but I'm telling her. Then I can only sympathize. But have you thought about the doctor I recommended? Has Sarah agreed? Not anymore, John answered. Things are different now. You know how sick people become very unhealthy. Sarah is no exception. Sometimes she can be unbearable. See for yourself. Well, go on then. I've got a lot to do. Not from my face. I'd rather work. It's better for me. Don't worry. Okay, we'll wait. In the meantime, if you need a vacation, you can go home and rest. Emily, I think Sarah's sick. We have to do something. Finally, a car pulled up in front of the house. The door slammed and someone entered the house. Sarah craned her neck to see who it was. And when a man entered the room, she shrieked and turned pale. Michael. She was scared. She thought since Michael had come here, he must have John with him. She didn't want to see him. For some reason, she felt very creepy. Images flashed through her mind, one scarier than the next. Sarah was looking forward to Andrew. Emily said they were having guests over tonight. She was looking forward to the meeting so she could brag about her progress. It was like she had a second wind after what had happened. Or maybe it was the herbs Emily had given her. Michael, what does he have to do with this? You're the one who saved me and no one else. What's wrong with you? Sarah, don't be scared. Michael came alone. And you don't have to worry, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have found you. Emily ran over to Sarah and patted her cheeks. Well, he's the one who got me the job. Only he made sure that John didn't find out about it. Because your husband was always jealous of Michael and would probably refuse his help. How do you know him? I called him when your husband fired me and told me he was taking you to your mom's. I called Michael right away. When Emily stopped talking, Sarah reached out her hand to Michael and said. While Emily was telling Sarah all this, she looked at Michael. Her eyes were starting to smile. Michael had always been a true friend. He was always willing to come to the rescue. So I called, and Michael sent his chauffeured car. We started watching your house. By late afternoon, Michael let his driver go, and it was just the two of us. And then we did. But we got a little carried away on the way, and we lost sight of you. I thought we'd never find you. But we didn't, and we found you in time. Sarah didn't realize the time had passed. She talked and couldn't get enough of it. She'd forgotten that you could just talk about anything and see that you were being listened to with great interest. Yeah, you're right. I feel like it's been forever. Sit next to me. It's been so long since we've seen each other. Sarah choked and stopped talking. Then she pulled herself together and finished her sentence. Of course I'd be delighted, she answered. I've always said. I'm very glad I saw you, Sarah. And I want to tell you this. I found a doctor who has treated cases like yours before. Would you be willing for me to take you to him? There was nowhere to live. And the last 2 days he slept at work. The police did nothing. When he called them and asked if they had any results, they said that they hadn't yet, but they were doing their best. John, meanwhile, had no idea what to do. He lost his apartment. Then his car broke down and he had to take it to a repair shop. Money was running out like water. In addition, Michael disappeared somewhere, and his deputy Paul did not want to give him any money and said that he had to wait for his salary, because Michael had not given him any orders in this regard. I've always told John that if you have one chance, you should take it. John realized he was beginning to dislike this conversation. He referred to the fact that his wife was not here right now, and that when he brought her back, he would be sure to let them know. But you yourself gave the keys to a complete stranger. You didn't take any receipts or copies of documents. Besides, we don't know if there were any deeds to the apartment. Who can prove they were yours? Where's your wife? Why don't you bring her in? We realize she's sick, but then let us come and ask her ourselves. We'll hear what she has to say. You're not doing a very good job, John said. You realize that I am left without an apartment, without documents, and you are not even scratching there. I should just take out a loan and buy myself at least a one-room apartment, and that would be the end of it, he thought. But it is unlikely to give him a loan, because the bank is bound to find out that he has a sick wife. Then it would be better to ask Michael for money. But he had not been at work for a week already, and John did not understand where his friend had gone. He clutched his head, not knowing what to do. Fear was creeping in deeper and deeper with its insistent tentacles. He regretted having started all this. He should have accepted it and not gone to the police. It was his own fault, and he thought he'd get help. After he finished talking, he felt truly scared for the first time. What would he do now if they wanted to meet Sarah again? And he would tell them that she was still at her mother's house. Wouldn't they want to go there themselves? What's he going to do? What would he do when they found out she wasn't even there? That's right. It all started when I got rid of Sarah, he pondered. It was all because of her. She ruined my life when she was alive, and she's ruining it now that she's dead. John didn't know what to do. He had nowhere to live, and he probably wouldn't even have lunch or dinner today. He felt homesick. He sat down in his chair and wondered what had gone wrong and when. What had happened? Why had everything fallen apart for him? Everything collapsed like a house of cards. Time went by and still no Michael. Payday came, but there was some kind of delay and John didn't know what to do. He tried to call his friends to borrow some money, but they complained that they had a lot of problems now, and the time was difficult, and that they could not help him. "Hi, can I see you?" John asked, looking at Michael questioningly. He nodded and looked at his friend after saying goodbye to someone. The next day he saw Michael's car parked outside the parking lot. He immediately ran to his office. Michael was sitting in a chair, rested, tanned, and talking to someone affectionately on the phone. John had no doubt that she was no longer alive. There was no pity for her, only anger rising, because she was the one who had made things worse for him from the beginning. "How much do you need?" "You're still asking? You disappeared for almost a month, and now you're asking me what I wanted. First of all, I don't have any money, and I still haven't been paid. I'd like to borrow some from you. It's urgent. Did you want something?" "I found a doctor. They say he's a doctor from God. He promised to get her back on her feet. So I need this money. So you'll help me? And let me ask you, for what purpose are you asking so much?" John named a number, and Michael looked at him in surprise and asked, "I don't get it." "This is all about Sarah. I need to get her back on her feet, and you're turning me down." John thought he'd misheard, because he was sure Michael wouldn't say no. "No. I'm getting married. I met the one person I love more than life. So I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mood for you right now." "What wedding? Who's getting married?" "I'm sorry, man, but I can't help you right now because I have a wedding to get ready for." "But Michael, I have no one else to turn to. And I already promised her. She's waiting. Can you imagine what would happen if I told her I'd failed? But you're her husband, not me. I remember I offered you my help, but you and Sarah turned me down. So what do you want from me now? Besides, I've already told you I've got some expenses ahead of me. I can't lend you any money yet. But you must have misunderstood. It's for Sarah. You're the one who told me you wanted her to get back on her feet." "Wait, okay, I'll do it. But tell them I got my paycheck. Something's not going well there, and I have a family to feed. You know what I mean? There's medicine, and I'm broke." "Okay, but you're going to have to wait a little while. I have to leave again today, but I won't be gone long. I'll be back later, and I'll introduce you to my future wife. But we'll settle the money issue too." Michael looked at John thoughtfully, then said. When he thought of Dinah, John frowned. After all, he had never seen her again after that meeting and had never been able to call her. Then she must have changed her number, because after he'd called her, her phone had been permanently disconnected. Apparently she didn't like him, and he was dreaming, thinking they'd be together. John nodded and left the office. At least he would have something to eat today. Then his thoughts drifted back to his colleague. I wonder who he's going to marry. If it's a girl like Dinah, he's a lucky man. All right, they'll give you your paycheck. Go to the accounting department. Tell them I told them to give it to you. He's here, Sarah shouted, and Emily came rushing into the room. Sarah looked out the window and at her watch. Emily saw this and smiled. She was happy for Sarah. She had blossomed lately. She had become so beautiful that it was impossible to take one's eyes off her. Love was good for everyone. And Michael was different, not as sullen as he had been before. She was happy for them, for they were the most beautiful couple. But that's okay. He'll find a girl tonight because he's got money. And soon Michael will give him the right amount of money, and he will buy an apartment and forget about everything like a terrible dream. Start a new life. Fix the hem of your skirt. It's just that you shouted so loudly that I was afraid you were going to jump up and run towards your lover. Yes, I remember, Sarah said quietly, impatient. Sarah, careful. It's too early for you to make any sudden moves. You remember that the doctor told you not to. Sarah smiled and looked at Michael with a look that made him forget how to breathe. I can't leave you alone for too long. Even though I realize that Emily is with you, I'm still worried about you all the time. Sarah blushed. Emily smiled affectionately. The door opened, and Michael entered the room. He met Sarah's gaze and smiled with relief. I'll come with you. Besides, the doctor released me, and he talked to Emily and explained everything to her. And we're going to be homeschooling her now. Well, here I am. I really should be getting back. You know I can't leave work for that long. I missed you too. I couldn't wait for you to finally get here. Honey, I need to talk to you. I'll tell you what I've come up with, but you tell me if you like my idea or not. Just tell me the truth. It's out of the question, the woman smiled, and Sarah put her arms around Michael and snuggled up to him. Oh, that's great. I moved your stuff into my house. I hope you don't mind. And by the way, Emily, you'll have your own room there too. Will you be living with us? In the morning, he got to work as usual and went about his business. When he heard someone walking down the hallway saying that Michael was back, and they were saying that he was getting married soon, John smiled, got up and went to Michael's office. Knocked. And Sarah knew exactly who she was talking about. John was anxiously awaiting Michael's return. The money was melting away again, because staying in a hotel was very expensive for John, and he didn't want to live in cheap rooms. I will. You know me. I'm a terrible liar. But one person that you and I both know very well does. I'm fine. Well, aside from the problems, Sarah's been giving me a hard time. She talks about this doctor all the time. Remember, you promised me money. Why don't we solve this problem? You finally arrived. I'd given up on you. Hello to you too. How's it going? Michael asked. He entered and saw him sitting at his desk, dealing with some papers. All right, fine. Sarah's not a stranger to me either. And I understand how difficult this is for both of you. I'll wire you the money now, but first I want you to meet my future wife. John gave me a number. All right, let's solve it. So how much did you say you needed? Sarah was all John could manage to say. John couldn't take his eyes off Sarah. She had changed a lot, even more beautiful than she was before. And then she was on her feet. She was walking on her own, but how? John heard the door open. He turned around and a smile froze on his lips. Sarah walked into the office with small, tentative steps. Emily's wheelchair was rolling behind her. Apparently, Sarah couldn't walk much yet, and then she would get into the wheelchair to rest. Yes, I understand, John nodded. Yes, you're not mistaken. This is my future wife. She has filed for divorce, and you will be unilaterally divorced. Your word means nothing. So, John, is there anything you want to tell me, like how you lost your apartment? Only it was my people, and it wasn't sold. They just changed the locks. Sarah still has the apartment. I'll give you some of the money. But I have one condition. You pack up and get out of this town for good. I was going to turn you in to the police, but thanks Sarah. She talked me out of it. Said if you hadn't done that, she'd probably still be living with you and be crippled for life. It's like they say it was a blessing in disguise, but it was a blessing in disguise. But it was a blessing in disguise. Then he turned to Michael, who was looking adoringly at his bride. He stood up and turned around at the door. Michael and Sarah looked at each other. They were happy. What would happen to him now? He didn't know at all.